wanted to do that start into. Oh, I think I missed one section. I said something about America being a special, target of our analysis. But we'll focus on Ukraine. We'll get started with some news, and I will get going. And hopefully, I see you as listener, Wendy. But hopefully you get this one. Let's see here again. And there we go again. Let's hope this works. So, anyway, folks, I think that it's still a couple minutes early. So, thank you for all being here. And again, I ask you guys to go down to the purple pill, click on that, click on the heart, and then click on the recycle and get some more people in here. So, and if you don't see a purple pill, let me know. But anyways, let's see again. Wendy, I still see you as listener. Perhaps you should start as a speaker. Would you request for speak to speak? Well, yeah. Oh, look at that. Speaker, co-host. Excellent. Hey, Wendy, welcome.
Finally, I had to turn off the Wi-Fi so it would work. How are you, James?
Hey, doing good. Wanted to start a little bit early. My plans for the advertising tweet that I usually put out went awry somehow. Anyway, it didn't go out. I don't know what I did wrong. But anyways, folks, here we are. Wendy, you're here. I hope you heard that explanation. And with that, I think since we're just at the minute, I will go ahead and go through our timestamp, which we like to do because it is useful to remember what time and date it is. And here in the United States on the East Coast, it is the 4th of February of the year 2026, and it is 10:59 a.m. And now I'm just going to round up because I'm sure the time will change quickly. And that means that in Kiev, it is 1800 hours, and that is the city of courage. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, am I getting this right? Yes, yes, I am getting it right. And then UTC time, also known as UK time, it's 1600 hours. So there we are. Timestamp, Wendy. Back to you for a moment.
Hi, James. Happy to be with everybody today. Decoding should be with us in just a moment. There are some interesting disinformation things happening in the news today. There's also one of the more recent things is there's a kind of a boom in Tambov. A fuel train derailed and some of the cars are on fire. Over the last hour or two since I've been awake, I've been seeing posts that say the fire is spreading. This is in Russia, not Ukraine. So any fuel that goes boom in Russia is a good thing. Have you seen that one, James?
No, I have not, but you're absolutely right. What's good for the goose is not always good for the gander, but in this case, it's great for the double-headed eagle, I guess. But it would be bad if it happened to Ukraine. So I'm glad that it happened in Russia, burning things. That is. So I see that decoding is hopefully going to easily and quickly pop up. He's a speaker, so decoding, I am going to do something for you that I've done for Wendy already this morning, and that is quickly get this kind of preamble out. So here we are. I just wanted to repeat some things that you said in my framework that goes with this, and that is disinfolklore is a specific form of disinformation that is a medium for affecting our moods, intentions, motivations, and attitudes in ways which help the disinfolklorist, which most of the time is Russia. The disinfolklore framework permits us to protect ourselves from and understand and interpret malign information. Volia Radio looks through this lens to support Ukraine and defeat Russia's war of aggression and genocide against Ukraine. Welcome to Coding.
That's amazing, James. Thank you very much for that. Um, you kind of read my mind in a way, and Wendy. Great to be here. Great. Thank you all for being there. Um, Great. I'm here and ready to go whenever anyone else is, and to chat if you want to chat first, Wendy, James, or anyone else.
I think decoding that I just wanted to give you some rationale for doing that. Uh, the need for us to put this into context and understand what you do and why you do it and the kind of results that you get are important. And the other emphasis I would put on what you do is that you use your own framework and its many components, including re-archetyping, which I find a particularly valuable one. It's one among other tools that are out there that we should be looking for. So that's the only other thing I wanted to say. And the other thing I said earlier that I didn't say to Wendy was um, there's especially a lot of disinfolklore that's happening in the United States, and especially malign re-archetyping. For example, I, based on your theory, predict that the Kennedy Center will be in the future in our bold new history that we'll learn in the future. The Kennedy Center will have failed because of lack of interest and lack of support for John F. Kennedy, etc. Yes, that's one of my predictions based on your system. Maybe it's minor, but it's emblematic of what I think is happening in the States.
Uh, well, I will do now for you, James, what you would do for me in a similar situation. But I'll premise it by saying we are moving towards a conception of the truth. So this is going to be the seventh episode in the Battling Archetype series that we started 8 weeks ago, because we missed one, maybe even 9 weeks ago. Who knows? But we are moving towards an answer to a question which was posed by scouts and indeed raised by Iona about what is the truth. And what James you're alluding to there is that the truth in inverted commas might is at risk of being defined by Donald and Donald's attempts to re-archetype the Kennedy Center and indeed annihilate Kennedy and this hero of his youth that he wishes to destroy. It's not enough to have RFK Jr. Absolutely annihilate from the inside the Kennedys, and I note all of the Kennedys' letters and warnings to the Congress to um, not to allow their father, their uncle, their cousin, their brother to become health secretary. But I'm a little bit more optimistic, and I got on this optimistic. Um, it was a Ukrainian on the series of Ukrainian TV stations that I've just recently discovered, and I know Lexicon has as well, that are broadcasting in English or AI English. And there was a Ukrainian academic at an American university who I saw this week, and he was very certain, and it lodged a nice a nice germ in my mind about how temporary all of this is. Now, of course, as you allude to, James, it may not become temporary. This may be this attempt to re-archetype reality and turn the world upside down, to turn falsehood into truth, for the usurper, the literal and metaphorical usurper Donald, Jan 6th, whatever happened in the 2016 and 2024 elections with Russian help, and all of that, the usurper is attempting to turn the world upside down. but I've alluded to this before. I studied in great detail the early transmission of ideas in the early German Reformation, 1518 to 1530, and the world turned upside down. And Sebastian Brandt's late 15th century book, The Ship of Fools, uh, played a really big part in the re-archetyping of the Pope as Antichrist and the use of memes and cartoons to re-archetype the church in a certain way, done by the leaders, the oligarchs. And yes, they succeeded in some ways, but the Catholic Church is still around, and there still is truth. There's truth in all of our lives, and I'm quite optimistic at the moment. We're in the end game, but I do note the Kennedy Center and this and what's going on there, and yeah, but thank you for looking through the lenses of Disinfolklore at it. I was going to do two things today, was my plan, and I'll just tell you these things, and then I'll go back to you and Wendy, to see what else you want to do. So I was going to continue episode 7, battling archetypes, continue that, but also you read my mind, James, because I'm planning lessons and courses at the moment at various levels. I'm also doing a huge rebranding exercise, and it's an amazing process, really cathartic and really interesting, and will be of equivalent significance to my work on Disinfolklore, as its invention was as the battling archetypes, um, a manifestation that I revealed at the Munich. At the time of the Munich Security Conference last February, this is going to be a similar big change, and part of it is this pitching of the idea and the tools to different levels, beginners, and but for all of us who've been listening for the past 36 weeks now, I'll just do a mini reminder of the essential tools to reorientate ourselves, as James did there, looking through the Disinfolklore spectacle, the lenses of the Disinfolklore analytical method at what Donald is trying to do in one dimension with the Kennedy Center. For those who don't know, um, he inexplicably tried to fire the board almost immediately he got into office. They resisted. In the end, like a steamroller, he got rid of them. Then he's attempted unlawfully to rename it the Trump Kennedy Center. And he got all his patsies in there, basically the spouses of all his Epstein connected cabinet members and lawyers, and various people are on the board. So he controls the board, and performers. And this Kennedy Center, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, Wendy or James, was established by an act of Congress to memorialize and commemorate JFK. And that's its sole purpose. It made, well, not, you can't talk about nonprofits making a nonprofit, but it washed its face, made a surplus of something like $40 million last year. But already Donald has tanked it, as he's tanked absolutely everything he's ever been involved in. But I do believe underpinning all of this, along with RFK Jr. and all his other motivations, is this idea of annihilating this golden boy of his youth that perhaps someone he hated in his life talked about. And he just wants to annihilate all that is good. I don't believe he'll succeed. I don't believe any of them will succeed at this in the end. And the end is coming near. And part of my confidence in that actually is my perspective from 6,000 years of Indo-European history and the triumph of right and truth. It's in our language, it's in our words, almost every sentence, and the repeated attempts, as memorialized in stories about the devil or the snake or whatever, in every culture, going back literally for 6,000 years, that we have records for, and it's embedded in our language, where the word in, for instance, Hindi, and early Indian languages for snake is nagi, negi, nagi, negi, negi. It means anti, the negative. And this is what Donald and the devil and Satan and Putler and all of these horrific oligarchs who were involved in and this governance system that the Epstein system has given us, is giving us a window into, are trying to. They are the neg. They are the anti. But I don't believe they'll triumph. We've got Ukraine, we've got President Zelensky, and we've got the truth on our side, and we've got the Disinfolklore analytical method and the Disinfolklore perspective. So I was first going to go through just a couple of the tools, very easy kind of snack bites, and then go back to the battling archetypes. Aspect, which is these 12 tools in which is a more longue durée thing, which I've been doing for the last few weeks. So that's what I was proposing to do today, James and Wendy. Out.
Sounds good to me. I appreciate it. And I just want to reemphasize this is just an emblematic example of the kind of things that Russia and Trump are after. And, that's the only reason I brought up the Kennedy Center. There are bigger things afoot than that. But you understand the small things like this well. You have a good lens into big things. So, yes, I think you have a good plan here. Looking forward to more of this, and just want to reemphasize how valuable it is to have other lenses. And just lately, I will just say this, and we will not go into it, but I have been enjoying Clausewitz on War Book because that's another lens, especially the introduction, because it's short, relatively, that just taps on all of the big keys there to understand. And this is what I mean by one of many tools. And you've probably in your lifetime as a extensive student, I would say, have learned lots of frameworks. So I appreciate you building another one that is extremely useful. And yeah, thanks. So sorry to take up so much time blabbing, but there it is.
Very much appreciate it, and very much appreciate your noticing of the Kennedy Center as the epitome of re-archetyping and the attempt to re-archetype. It epitomizes everything. It's the symbol of stuff he hates, and then he is literally physically annihilating it, as he said yesterday, or was it today? Um, we're going to spend about 200 million renovating it. And we're going to use it's not going to cost that much because we're going to use the steel inside. And you're like, what? You're gonna shave off the concrete and reuse this? I mean, what are you talking about? But anyway, hopefully, he's not long for this world. But anyway, for the world of politics and all of that, for the avoidance of doubt. Great. Okay, so I thought. So I've been thinking a lot about how entry points, which I'll be trying over the next few weeks, and so one of these for what I call Disinfolklore's building blocks is basically if you're new to Disinfolklore, are you new to Disinfolklore? Actually, that's a bit of a trick question because if you live in an information-rich environment today, you're already steeped in Disinfolklore. You just couldn't notice it until I coined the term to describe how strategically targeted memes affecting our attitudes, motivations, intentions, and moods pass through our incoming troll radars to transform our identities in unseen ways. Now, I have named it Disinfolklore, just as the writers in the book of Genesis named things and have Adam and God naming things. Now I've named it Disinfolklore. You can get your eye in and begin to move be more mindful about how strategically we are being manipulated by Disinfolklore, masquerading as news, gossip, advice, both in your online and in your real life. So I see news is a province of folklore, as is Disinfolklore. Disinfolklore describes stories, however delivered, that communicate meanness with a view to altering the moods, intentions, motivations, and attitudes of their consumers in ways which satisfy the strategic demands of disinfolklorists. let's take today, Donald. It's just so horrid. You say to that? And Donald said, well, he agreed a ceasefire from Sunday to Sunday, and yesterday's Monday. So of course he had to do it. These two people have been fighting forever, for the past few years. It's a war that wouldn't have happened, and all that malarkey. And so that's pure disinfolklore. It's pure meanness. It's both siding Ukraine and Russia. It's telling lies. So it's not ethically disciplined. It's um, it's part of Russia's information war against Ukraine. And as we heard Donald Tusk refer to today, which many of us have come to this view over the past few weeks, that the Epstein relationship with Russia and Donald's relationship with Epstein and Russia and this entire governance system, which the honey traps affecting the survivors and victims, in awful ways, were just part of this awful governance system in the way that our world has been run. And we get a great insight into it through this English guy called Peter Mandelson, who English listeners will know all of the disinfolklore going back to the days of New Labour with him and his loans for houses and all of that stuff. And it turns out he's there's evidence that he while the EU, while in 2008 the financial world financial or 2007 the world financial system was about to fall apart, and Gordon Brown literally saved the world, who rescued him and made him into a lord so he could be his minister. He was sharing private correspondence about the bailout with Epstein, who was then making, or Epstein, because it's a Russian. These are all Brighton Beach mafia adjacent people. They're all Russian, despite their, all American looks. This is all a Russian mafia operation. He's sharing papers which are then monetized by them and exchanged for influence and other things. And that little vignette or example, it seems this is how these people are trying to corrupt and usurp our world and usurp what is right. But it's up to us to ensure they don't succeed, as we're trying our best with, say, the Ukraine example. But I genuinely don't think it will. It will succeed. So when Donald speaks like that, he is communicating meanness with a view to altering the moods, intentions, motivations, and attitudes. He's intending to depress Ukrainians. It's just the most horrible thing. Like if there are sins, I don't know, I can't remember what they are, venal sins, or the worst sins ever in, say, the Catholic Church, that can just be through words, verbal. Then Donald does it 1,000 times a day. At a time Ukrainians are freezing, he tempts them into going out in the street, but with this ceasefire troll. I'm sure very few of them believe in it. But it's just horrible. So there's an example of if you wonder what is disinfolklore, anything Donald ever says, that is just disinfolklore. And news reporting this disinfolklore or any other kinds is the main means of creating the disinfolklore universe in which we are currently being enmeshed on an unprecedented scale. And that is something that I'm offering, which many practitioners in disinformation don't offer, which is that the system-wide effects of not just this particular mean meme by Donald, but the system effects of zillions of them, including the missile strikes, Epstein, freedom from being missile struck, freedom from being enslaved by the Russians, and all of the terrible consequences that would arise if the purported annexation of Crimea and all that has happened as a result of that, as a function of that, was allowed to stand. And so we have chosen to be in this world personal lives, or in sports betting, or other areas of their lives, whatever interests them, the environment, or just even in their workplace, where they're trying to deal with a not a very nice colleague, or bosses who are tricksters, shame and tricksters in their own small way relative to see a family resemblance to what Donald between what Donald is trying to do to the Kennedy Center and archetyping. The one, it's empirical. Two, it's descriptive. So disinfolklore is meant to depress spirits. It affects motivations in order to entrench in people that it's useless to resist. So when I talk about disinfolklore, I'm being descriptive about something empirical, but disinfolklore itself, as for confusingly for people, is a really great storytelling technique, and he uses resonant verbal images and props, whether it's a red cap. So these are all descriptive, but the purpose is clear, really, to depress spirits, whether it's the spirits of his cynical followers, whether they are oligarchs who seek to benefit from it, or who think this is the way, or people like us who are appalled by everything that's going on. Three, it's a way of seeing. It's a way of so the disinfolklore. Once you get your eye in, you can use it as a way of seeing and perceive certain kinds of patterns in data. For disinfolklore inculcates rules. It normalizes certain mental routines. Don't go to the forest. Don't bother supporting Ukraine. You're not Ukrainian. Cross the river and you'll be forced to become LGBTIQ. There's all these kind of rules which are unknown to us, inculcated in our minds through the means of certain stories, strategically designed, emotionally resonant stories. And this is a feature of folklore going back forever. One of its great functions is to teach children, don't go to that forest, don't go to the island. It's also a five. It's a description of my project, Disinfolklore, a necessary precursor to understanding what counter Disinfolklore consists. Because, of course, all of this is about, and I try to remember this in my work, it's not just about identifying or describing something terrible and going, oh, I can't do anything about it. It's about acting as well. So that's the counter disinfolklore. And all of us have chosen that path, all of us in the space and in the pro-Ukraine community, those who identify as part of NAFO and Volia Radio, of course. We have chosen to counter disinfolklore, to act against it, not just to be consumers of it and to throw our hands up and say, okay, I can't do anything about it, so I'm not going to bother. Um, we've chosen to engage in mimetic warfare in lots of different ways. Uh, Traditional definitions of disinformation distinguish it from mere misinformation on the grounds of intention to mislead. But the problem here uh, is that the same meme, when spoken by me, if I am being méchant and I'm trying to deliberately mislead someone, would be disinformation. But if Wendy accidentally believed it and just passed it on to James, it was just misinformation. Uh, but its effect is the same if James then passes it on. It doesn't matter if I've deliberately manipulated James and Wendy has accidentally manipulated James. If James then tells his sister or his daughter or his mother or his wife or whatever, or cousin, or says it on the radio, the same meme, it doesn't matter whether it's intentionally communicated or unintentionally communicated. It's still alive and it's been passed on, and the energy inside that meme is staying alive. And if we're really most concerned about all of this because of its effects, not just something in and of itself, we're not just interested in disinformation or Ukraine. Um, as to pass the time. We're also interested because it's intrinsically interesting, and of course it is intrinsically interesting, but we're also interested in it because of its impact on people, on their moods. We see what it does to people. We see how Donald has affected all American and practically everyone's lives on the planet. The same with Putin's invasion of Ukraine, whether it's the price of oil or our depressed spirits, or 14 million Ukrainian uh, internally displaced people, and 9 million of whom left Ukraine. So these have great effects, and therefore that's what it doesn't matter in some ways about the intention. We can argue all day about Putler's real intention. Is he doing because of this? But that doesn't really matter. What really matters is the effects, and that's where what I try to provide, which is look for the mana in the meme, and that's one of the main weapons and tools and unique aspects of the disinfolklore analytical method. So we take units of information and we attempt to discern the quality of the mana inside them. And as we get better at this, and the first step to getting better at this is just thinking about doing it, then whether James tells this, communicates this meme to me, passes this meme into through the barrier into my brain, into my mind, to kind of tickle my mind, and Wendy doesn't matter whether James intentionally is manipulating me or Wendy is accidentally manipulating me. Uh, if we've got this skill that we look for the mana in the meme, and we're looking for the what is the energy inside it, and how is it affecting my mood, my intention, my attitude, and many of us, because we see the family resemblance between different kinds of memes, like the nuclear threats, for instance. It doesn't matter whether it comes from Medvedev or our friend who's breathlessly repeating something they read in the New York Post. We see the energy in this, which is Russia's attempt to coercively control humanity and get us to surrender, to surrender to Russism. And that's a real powerful aspect in the disinfolklore analytical method, and looking for the mana inside the meme. So then once we're looking for it, then we can evaluate, we can create different tools, which I try to help for identifying the energy inside memes. And one of the key tools is actually its impact on us. If a piece of data or information, for instance, like this, when I heard Donald say this about and I hope now passing this on to all of you, and I'm trying to do it wrap it in a wrapping so that it's not disinfolklore, it's more in folklore. It's informing you, and it's a story to inculcate an idea that I had. So my emotional, visceral reaction was just disgust, which of course is one of the tools that Donald and his ilk use. And we've spoken about this before, especially in the context of contagion. And there's this work by cultural psychologists about how this emotion of disgust, which began, it is believed that it began as as an automatic as a mechanism we use biologically to not drink the poisonous soup, or and to puke it out, or to vomit it out, and then it passes from that into culture, and we begin to project disgustingness or non-disgustingness into different articles or objects, and then MAGA attempt to get us to think of Hunter Biden or Hillary Clinton as disgusting, so that we think of them with the whole Pizzagate thing, that we and the food is intrinsically involved in all of this, that we when she's associated with this dark cabal of child slavery, and it's all located in this pizzeria in Washington D.C. So that this is entrenched in people's minds through folklore, through these stories promoted by Fox and through a million different channels, that then you don't even remember why she disgusts you, but you sense or you feel that disgust. And so the moment I felt that disgust with Donald and that reaction on behalf of 42 million Ukrainians and whatever it is, 350 million fellow Americans, I my incoming troll radar was activated, and I realized, okay, I'm not going to go with this feeling. I'm not going to go with this disgust. I'm going to use it as an example tonight, uh, but I'm not going to allow Donald to impact my mood. I'm going to bank it. I'm going to put it in a little capsule in my mind, and then I'm going to move on from it. But it is an example. Very little of what he does disgusts me in this visceral way, but that really did, because I'm reading about what Ukrainians are going through at the moment, and it's horrific. And just the idea he could kind of explain away as natural. Well, of course, Putler, he lies about this week of a ceasefire. He lies about the ceasefire, and then he says, "Well, it was Sunday to Sunday, so it's Monday. So obviously, he's going to send his missiles." It's probably top three worst things a U.S. president has ever and will ever say. But as I say, it was the disgust that I felt that alerted me to a troll. Someone is trying to get into my mind, and I'm going to protect myself from it. And that was wrapped up inside his story about the missiles and Putler and all of that. And incidentally, uh, this was minutes before he took a dump in the Oval Office in the White House. Yet again, he did a public poop in with people around, and they hurried everyone out. So that's good counter disinfolklore, because if we cannot resist opportunities for toilet humor, especially when this is one of many times he has apparently taken a public dump. And I'll post in the purple bit one of the previous times. I'll do that now, actually, because it is slightly unbelievable for normal people who aren't immersed in this nonsense. Um, so the so seven, the mana of so the energy of Rushist disinfolklore's coercive control. So this is one of the manifestations of what we can how we can detect. Um, I'm just posting this thing of one of the previous dumps if anyone wants to read that. And Michael Cohen was the source of that one. So the manner of Rashist, Russia's disinfolklore is coercive control. So the energy of Russia from the macro to the micro to the words of individual Russiast so-called middle bloggers, Russiast guys. Um, I hesitate to call them officers, army officers, but the guys in the field who hang the and the way Donald treats women and people he others. So that energy, that coercive control, they dump. I've just posted that thing about Donald's other dump, using dump in a different sense for the non-native English speakers. Please excuse my play on words. Um, so the manner of Russia's disinfolklore is coercive control. So you can back propagate from that. If you spot coercive control, which is quite carefully defined in English law because it's illegal now, and that we might know in different ways we may have experienced in our own lives with partners or girlfriends or boyfriends or husbands or wives, God forbid, or there's elements of it in many relationships that we may have had in our lives, but there's a certain level of intensity of coercive control in relationships. It's usually male on female that in English statute law, it's now outlawed. And if you see coercive control in a meme or in a story, or either someone is trying to coercively control you, or you see Donald trying to coercively control Ukraine into surrender by withholding intelligence cooperation, so they had to withdraw from Kursk, and all of this stuff, all of the perfect phone call, in air quotes, where he was coercively controlling President Zelensky into announcing an investigation into the Hunter Biden trial, and in return he would get 280 million dollars worth of Javelin missile systems, which the Congress had already appropriated money specifically for Ukraine for, and a White House visit. That's coercive control, and we see in the Budapest memorandum, it's specifically a violation of the Budapest memorandum to exert economic coercion on Ukraine by any of the parties, whether it was England or the Russia's Federation or the United States. And yet, this normalization of economic coercion by Donald through tariffs are a form. His whole tariff troll is a form of coercive control, dual facing, not just on other countries, but also on the Americans who are paying the tariffs. So this coercive control, it's imminent in almost every breath Donald takes as a case study. And then if you can see it in him and what he does, then you can see aspects of it in what other normal people do, or in geopolitics, or in what Putler does. And whenever you encounter that energy in memes, then you know that's probably disinfolklore. Someone is probably trying to affect my mood, my motivation, my attitude, um, and my intentions through this story whose imminence is coercive control. So that's one very common imminence in disinfolklore. So if you're looking for the mana in the meme, so the energy in a meme, whether that meme is a story someone telling you, or a story you're participating in with a friend, or something or you see on Twitter, or X, or Instagram stories, or it's images or something you think about, then when you you're looking for the man in the mean, and then you see this aspect of coercive control, then you just have a shortcut, because often these judgments, we're trying to make them really quickly in real life. That's what I want Disinfolklore analytical method to be, something we can use as I do it, is to use it in my daily life to get me through the day and to help me navigate very complicated realities that I and others live in and operate in. Um, and we're looking for ways of cutting through the confusion. And you're looking for the man in the meme. You spot coercive control, and then you mount your defense or your counterattack, or you just get out of there, uh, because you don't need to spend 3 days trying to work out what's going on here. You're just like, this is not a story that I want to let affect my energy. I don't want how I act to be changed by this, because someone is deliberately trying to coercively control me into behavior which is against my identity. And if I engage in this behavior, if I allow myself to be coercively controlled, and obviously there are circumstances in which we all have to surrender to it because we're just not powerful enough, but to resist at that moment. But that doesn't mean that we can't try and recognize it. And Epstein's victims and Donald's victims often understand they're being coercively controlled, like we do, like I do now. But we just can't do anything about it for the time being. Just have to wait till we get a bit bigger and we find a lawyer or something else. But we can keep our identity keep our identity, help sustain our identity by noticing what's going on and by mentally resisting. That's just a cheap joke. But if you take my point that that the identities are transformed through these memes deliberately, Donald and Butler and those trying to change our world are trying to promote this spheres of influence nonsense from their IR textbooks, rather than territorial integrity being sacrosanct according to the UN Charter and a variety of international legal instruments, as well as being the obvious means of maintaining stability in our world. And there's a so I've described it a bit now, which is the cognitive model of how disinfolklore affects our intentions and motivations, and therefore our activities, including our thoughts. So this is a key part of the disinfolklore analytical method. And as James has just pointed out, there's loads of other models and out there. This is just the one that I've come up with to try and match my experience of how my mind, my manner, my energy is impacted by meanness in stories. And it's also something which I've developed, which I hope is accessible to people. This idea um, when we detect trolls coming in, we detect this energy, say, of coercive control, or we have a sense that someone is trying to manipulate us, that we mount our incoming troll radar is always looking for this. So it's mindfulness is another word for it, but that kind of puts people off. But it's this mindfulness. You're kind of a gatekeeper. There's a gatekeeper between the external and your mind, and you triage certain bits of information according to their risks, about negatively impacting your mood or your attitude or your intentions, or and when you detect coercive control in any form, then immediately you're on guard, and you're not going to let it affect your inner mind, your mana, and but when you feel your moods or your attitudes or your intentions being kind of scraped or vibrated by these data, these memes, that can also be a sign that it's time to, metaphorically speaking, get out of there and just not let it in, and just to just avoid it. So I think it's important to have an accessible cognitive model when we're talking about information, and of course the clue is in the term information. So it's about forming you. So it's forming the inside of you, and this is one of the beautiful things about Indo-European languages. We have really true renderings of what is happening in the words that we use every day, but we don't think of it in that way, or we think of inform as merely meaning somebody is telling us something we didn't know. But actually, the clue, when you think about the term, it's forming our inside, and that's kind of what I mean by the energy, the being manipulated, where someone is pulating your mana, your energy, with information, shaking it up and down, and in such a way that it affects, in a negative way, your moods and your intentions. And of course, you can do the opposite on people. I've been noticing a lot how children react for some reason. It's just the way they make each other laugh. Uh, uh, I see it. I've got my eye, and I'm seeing it a lot on the streets, and that kind of friendship is really familiar to me, and I try to do that too in my real life a lot. And that's positive trolling, definitional positive trolling, where two friends are just making each other laugh and smile, and they're practicing generosity by doing that, and their intention is all good, and I just think that's absolutely wonderful, and that is great uh, counter disinfolklore, and that's it positive in formation when we do that. So I'll come back to that again next week. I think hopefully that was helpful. That was 8 different of the tools. I actually got 37 more, which hopefully are quite accessible. So I'll stop there for a second and then catch a breath. Let Wendy or James say anything, or anyone else say anything. Then I'll move on to episode 7 if there's the appetite for that.
Well, another great lesson and lecture. Thank you. Appreciate this. This is something you might have to go to school for and pay in other places, but here it's free. I think I think having this framework has been particularly useful for me in terms of rapidly understanding what they're trying to do, what they're trying to get at, because you can project forward in time, and you can look backward at the roots that they're trying to attack with this method. So the all of the different tools. I will not keep track of them in my head for sure. Some of the tools are embedded forever, like re-archetyping. Now that you've mentioned that, so I don't have much more to say because it's too sweeping. Wendy.
No, I agree with you, James. This really, really useful information that, like James said, you'd have to pay for just about anywhere else. I did note that Bull Terrier came up and he has his hand up. Can we take his question?
You bet, of course. Hey, hi, James. How are you?
Yeah, how's it going? Yeah, thank you so much for the space, and thank you, Decoding. But look, I have to admit that I'm still slightly confused about Disinfolklore, and maybe you can help me. Like, my question is, how is Disinfolklore different from propaganda? For example, Volley Radio is biased. They put out biased information for Ukraine and against Russia, right? And NAFO is biased. I mean, NAFO, I follow, I'm a NAFO dog, and I receive memes and biased information based on my preferences on X, right? So, is there good disinfolklore, and is there bad disinfolklore, and how is it different from propaganda?
Before you reply, decoding, Bull Terrier, did you happen to hear the early part of this space, like the first 10 minutes before the hour and a little bit after? Well, Bull Terrier, the reason I asked if you had heard that stuff earlier is that we did have an explanation about what exactly this is, and I'm just going to do it one more time, but I'll leave most of it out and just say disinfolklore is a specific form of disinformation that is a medium for affecting our moods, intentions, motivations, and attitudes in ways in which help the distant folklorist, and that's usually Russia, but it could be any malign entity. Well, with that, and I see that Bull Terrier popped down, and now I see that you somehow fell off the shelf there, decoding, but you should be back on the shelf, and I see that Bull Terrier somehow popped down, and now he's popping back up. I hope. Uh, so, Wendy, it's a popping day today. Everybody's popping up and down. Let's see here. Here we go. I hope I'm done with my popping, and I hope you don't become, yeah, pop out of here. So anyway, all right. Well, so let me just quick, Bull Terrier. Did you happen to hear the definition at the outset? And now you did, anyways.
Yeah, sorry, I just dropped out there for a moment, but yeah, thank you for that explanation.
Okay, but it's not really what I think you need to hear in whole. I just wanted to start with that. Decoding, you popped up, you popped down. It's your turn.
Hi, Bulterio. Yes, so there's a key core module in Disinfolklore qua analytical method, which is what I call the code of positive trolls. And that has 6 elements in it. And the second element is ethical discipline. And the first element is generosity. So when Genesis man or mockers are telling a story, what I might call in folklore, on Volia. This is ethically disciplined in the sense that it's true. They're not misleading us. As we all know, those of us who listen to mockers, she's very, very careful about what she believes and what she lets be said. It's ethically disciplined. The standard is set by international law, ultimately, from my perspective, for territorial integrity is sacrosanct. Laws against discrimination on the grounds of certain protected characteristics, the Genocide Convention, one of the most uh, agreed to conventions in human culture, and a whole plethora of legal instruments which are the expressions of ethical standards. And so I use that standard, the second element of the Code of Positive Trolls, to distinguish between in folklore and folklore. But on the fly, when you're in your real life and dealing with people, you're doing a deal, you're talking about drones, you're trying to get components, you're a teacher, you're in school with students, and they're firing stuff at you, and you're just trying to work out what's going on. Is this person in good faith? The first element of the Code of Positive Trolls, which I find particularly useful, is generosity. And so if I'm picking up generosity in the genuine, real generosity in the other, then I know it's probably not intentional misdirection. and it's probably in folklore. It's probably not disinfolklore. But when you pick up a lack of generosity in, say, Donald or others, then you can brand it disinfolklore. So that's kind of the span between trying to decide in your immediate life whether this is true or not. If it's true, if it truly happened, then it could be disinfolklore if the Russians are talking about it with bad intentions. Often they take little bits of truth, but the definitional disinfolklore is anything Donald says, anything MAGA says. Now, obviously, until you've archetyped them as bad, as not in good faith, then you might be confused by little instances. Whereas now we know practically everything he says, but we still fall for the trolls. I was watching someone today who was talking about Ukraine war and the battlefield and all of that, and so they justifiably so they go off and want to complain about this thing which I've just spoken about. I skipped over it because I didn't need to hear them say it as well, where Donald talks about the weak and the ceasefire and all that stuff. And then the next story they're talking about is Donald and the Indian oil deal. And you're like, oh my God, we can't, we have to try and maintain our consistency between these two manifestations of Donald. That basically, if you've archetyped him as bad and in bad faith and a con man, and then I find myself falling for one of his trolls. You know, yet tomorrow he may say, "Oh, I'm thinking about sending the tomahawks to Ukraine," and then and we just have to resist falling for this for this contract. So we know that everything he says basically is disinfolklore. We don't know that with other people in our lives, and we've all probably gone on where you gradually discover someone that you relied on and liked and thought was acting in good faith is really spinning lies or tricking you or whatever, and then you realize that everything they've said is probably what I would call disinfolklore, because it's not ethically disciplined. It was untrue, falsities, it was manipulative, and it wasn't manipulative in a positive way, because as you say, Bull Terrier, on Volley Radio, the stories which Mockers is telling are manipulative stories on multiple layers of them. Now, the way she tells them, however, the way she frames them, I believe transforms them into infolklore. So when she's telling a story, a tale of woe of some mill blogger who has published this story on Telegram to manipulate people in Russia into sending him money, or Gherkin to forever try to persuade the Russian government to do a full mobilization. That is definitive disinfolklore and the kind of stories about telling it. But we can talk about those stories in a conscious way that transform them into unfolklore. That we're certainly manipulating each other by telling these stories, but we're not doing it. We're doing it out of generosity, to kind of a bit of relief, a bit of light relief in the midst of the pain, and we're also kind of raising money. And I noted Wendy's matching in an accidental Ukrainian, which I very appreciate, and so. So that gives you, that's kind of yeah, that's kind of how I would distinguish between. But the question you asked, Bull Terrier, is absolutely key. At what point does infolklore become disinfolklore, and vice versa? What's a positive troll and a negative troll? And that generosity criterion and ethical discipline, or right, as the second element, are the two most useful straight away. So why disinfolk? So back to episode 7. If you've got the end. Bull Terrier.
Decoding Bull Terrier has his hand up again.
Yeah, I was just reminded of the the venerable Jeremy Paxton, he's interviewer, British interviewer, and his famous quote was always, "Whenever I hear a politician talking, I ask myself, why is this lying bastard lying to me?" And the interesting thing about that quote is not that he asks, "Is he lying to me?" He asks, "Why is he lying to me?" He automatically assumes that the politician is lying, and I think this is relevant in this context. That my question is, not just the if you like the side that you're on, but it's like, who can you believe?
Thanks, Bull Terrier. I think that does is a good kind of framework for peeking at a reflection of distant folklore methods. Very good. But decoding. Any reply there? And please carry on with. I think it's 7.
Yeah, well, what he's looking there is at the intention of the person, which is a similar thing to this idea of, oh, let's distinguish between misinformation and disinformation. And so it's not enough, I don't think. Uh, and um, and Jeremy Paxman is quite a cynical. I don't really. Yeah, not all politicians are lying. I worked in the Palace of Westminster. I worked in the Irish Parliament. I worked in the Northern Ireland Assembly. I worked with a lot of people who aren't politicians, who aren't liars. They're just trying their best. And I worked with a lot of local politicians who do amazing things. So I don't subscribe to Paxman's characterizing of that, but it is, or it's yeah. Anyway, back to 7. Why is Disinfolklore an appropriate moniker? So in Disinfolklore, we look at characters in the stories we're served up. Ukraine as a damsel in distress who must be rescued by Donald. This is how he's trying to archetype Ukraine. We know it's obviously false. Ukraine as a damsel in distress who must be rescued by Russia because of its the coup and all of these trolls, or Ukraine as a damsel in distress who must submit. So we go back to coercive control. We go back to the people many of us might have met in our lives who kind of come from the perspective of realpolitik, and they say, "Oh yes, it's really, isn't it awful what Russia's doing? But honestly, it's time just to." Ukraine just needs to give up Donbass, and everything will be fine, and we'll be able to get back to our cappuccinos and whatever. So what's going on there is Ukraine is being archetyped as a character. Ukraine is a country of 42 million people, a very complex concept. It's a geographical space. It's an historical context. But if we take the Disinfolklore lens, then it's quite natural to us to see anything in a meme as a character. So obviously, when we're looking at Netflix or a story in the news, um, or any art, a play, we have characters in it manifesting as individual humans. But what the Disinfolklore analytical method allows us to do is perceive how actually abstract concepts take on the characteristics of characters, of personalities. And this is one of the main means Russia uh, uh, Russia, for in Russian disinfolklore, Russia's disinfolklore manipulates us because we don't notice it. We're not looking for it. We're not looking for the energy of character in an abstract concept like Ukraine. And Putler then can talk about Ukraine as a corpse, as a dead corpse, as a dead woman who is worthy of becoming a victim, as in that song by Red Mold, which I've talked about before, Sleeping Beauty in the Coffin, which international lawyers use as evidence of Putler's intention to genocide Ukraine, because he quoted this disgusting lyric, which I'm not going to repeat here, a Sleeping Beauty in a coffin. I walked up um, and this archetyping through characters it's a phenomenon that very few other disinformation, so-called disinformation researchers or propaganda people watching it or people interpreting data have noticed. Um, and I've not only noticed, I've tried to think about and work it out and articulate what it is going on. And so it's quite natural if you look at disinfolklore as a narrative form to see how it's quite natural to look at Ukraine as being archetyped as a particular character with characteristics. Russia does it when it calls itself a bear and it promotes this trope. And I first came across this with an American um, senior officer. A colonel who just I remember once in eastern Ukraine, he just mentioned to me about, oh, the bear, don't poke the bear. That was the first time I came across this meme. And actually what this is archetyping Russia as this strong bear, which you can't do anything when it pokes you. You can't poke it back, and if it pokes you, then it's your fault for poking it. So it's a really complicated, psychologically manipulative um, routine set of mental routines it sets off in our minds, and that is concealed by the use of a bear, which we think of, well, those of us who didn't grow up in Central and Eastern Europe with bears running around, or in Pennsylvania where bears are actually running around. But those who grew up in kind of bourgeois Western Europe haven't come across bears except in fairy tales and folk tales. And so that for me was a clue of how Russia uses character in stories. And Donald uses the same trick, and many propagandists use the same trick. And it's also a means of critiquing what they do. So Russia is the implacable bear. Better get over it, Ukraine. Stereotypes are delivered through the storytelling and newsy memes every time. Druidy Dawn, Disinfolklore, Donald, Duncy Putin, or their henchmen and women speak in Disinfolklore. So when I speak of archetypes, it's much deeper than mere stereotypes. I'm not just saying we're reifying reality, aggregating components into a trope. Archetypes connect deep Indo-European cognitive structures with particular aggregated ideas like the data resistant archetype of a Potemkin state. I was reminded this week, I was reading this this politician's speech from a an ex formerly occupied part of the former Soviet Union, and they were talking about NATO as if the past 3 years hadn't happened, or America's threats to invade NATO hadn't happened. And they were talking about how the Common Security and Defense Organization, which is Russia's fake NATO, itself, Russia is a necessary component in it. And I'm like, have you not Have you not seen anything in the past 3 years? Have you not picked up the data? Have you not updated your archetype of the CSTO, of Russia, of NATO, of the past few years? These characters have changed. They've been transformed. You're talking about NATO and Russia from Act One of the play, but those of us, and everyone here is one of them, who have been watching avidly for the past 4 years, day by day, these characters evolve and develop. We are now in Act Six, and the character of NATO is not what it used to be. Some of us will have seen reference today to how uh, a drone suspected to be a Russian drone penetrated Polish airspace and crashed, I think, quite far into Poland, right near, or maybe it didn't even crash. I don't know what happened to it. Maybe ran out of juice. near a Polish base, which it is rumored is one of its main uh, electronic warfare, one electronic warfare facilities. But no one there knew how to shoot it down. They couldn't shoot it down. They didn't know how to shoot it down. So this idea of NATO as a bear has to develop, and the idea of Russia as the bear. So this is when I talk about data resistant archetypes of a Potemkin state. I'm using literary references um, to kind of with the idea of a character to articulate how these signifiers like Russia or NATO, their actual contents can transform, changed. I've got a kitten who is going. Yeah. Anyway, not to worry. The show must go on. When I speak of disinfolklore archetyping, I'm talking about a process that that takes many different words and meanings, imbues them with dynamic characteristics, then does it again and again and again, and too much and never enough, which is basically the biography of Donald by his niece. But it's also what characterizes hyper-modernity as distinct from post-modernity or modernity or classical um, uh, period. Too much, never enough. So those two, acceleration and insufficiency. And before we know it, we're inside a MAGA universe wrought by Don Folklore. So it's the system effects of all of these aggregating um, characters and in the stories that we are embedded in, which are broadcast through the news, which are repeated repeatedly by Donald and by many others all the time, including ourselves. And the aggregating effect is that we're put inside this MAGA universe. So again, I'm using a metaphor which is from um, the the idea of being put inside a universe, a MAGA universe, but also inside a Russian universe, and what they're really going back to what I talked about at the beginning, and James was talking about at the beginning. The whole point of the Kennedy Center is just one of tens of thousands of vectors for each of us, which could have the impact of transforming our identities and our surroundings and turning the usurper's reality into an irreversible reality. But as it goes, I think the disgustingness of what we're gradually learning about the whole Epstein stuff and the enormity of it, and Donald's complicity in it, and Putler's complicity. It'd be somewhat ironic if Epstein brings down Putler. Out of all Putler's crimes, this is the one that ends him. Um, but the stock in trade of international relations professionals is storytelling, as if it's a phenomenon they speak of are more real than characters in a folktale. The West, NATO, Russia, strongmen, spheres of influence. They, as many of us see and understand now, this great German word for Putin understanders, they impute intention to this character called Putler, who's doesn't correlate in any way, sense, or being with the biological human called Putler. It's layers and layers away from the biological human by Putler. Yet they write very earnest essays in foreign affairs, and their escalation logic, their escalation management logic, dominated and colonized the minds of the people in the former President Biden's administration, as all of us understand so well. So these stories, this whole discourse in international relations, IR, itself is a form of storytelling. And if you're coming from a disinfolklore analytical method point of view, you can look at it just like storytelling, and you look for the characters they're talking about. Don't poke the bear. and all of this this chatter about Westphalia and spheres of it, and just all that fascist civilizations stuff. And these are all just story tales and storytelling, which has the same value, effect, potential for manipulation, and status, in my humble opinion, as any piece of news or anything coming out of Donald's mouth. And I just reference Donald a lot because he's a fairy tale character where kidnapping the fake president of Venezuela. This guy Gideon Rachman said, "Oh, Putler is going to look at this and decide to do the same to President Zelensky," and you're just like, "What are you talking about? I mean, well, like, on what level of lack of sophistication are you living on that you think uh, Putler thinks this way? I mean, and then that you think it's legitimate for the foreign editor or whatever he is of the FT to reveal how ignorant you are of this and how you cannot see that you're actually talking about a cartoon character in your mind who's occupying space in your mind, this Putin, who's walking along merrily along the street going, oh, I'm doing this full scale war against Ukraine for like whatever it is, 8 years, 9 years, and I've just spent 1.3 million men. I tried to invade Kyiv. I lost the Battle of Mostin. We had to withdraw and everything like that. Oh, but now Donald has invaded Venezuela. Ah, now I feel permission um, to do the same to President Zelensky. God, thank you, Donald, for doing that, because now there's this precedent, and it's just like on so many different layers, it's really dumb. But if you got a disinfolklore perspective, when and all of us, I'm not picking on him. Uh, well, I am obviously, but I don't mean to, because there's many things that I probably fall for the same type of trolls and talk about. But with a disinfolklore perspective, I try to critique what I say and the things I say by in the same way of just looking that, okay, I'm not talking about Putler here. I'm talking about a character. He's an invented character. It's like in a Netflix, but I'm imputing real characteristics to him that don't correspond to reality, and I'm trying to communicate something through telling this story that Butler will see Donald has invaded Venezuela and then decide to do. And it's total fiction, because as we all know, in reality, Butler has done this, tried to do this like 4,000 times already. Um, so there are these data resistant archetypes which underpin the characters like Ukraine. Um, but other archetypes are emerging or fading or enduring, and all of us are watching in real time the re-archetyping of Ukraine in the minds of, for instance, European leaders who realize European security now depends on Ukraine. Donald hasn't got the memo, or he just doesn't care. He just wants wants to destroy Europe, and he thinks Putler is a good means of doing that. And if Ukraine would just submit, then Putler could invade Moldova or Poland, and that will totally collapse the euro, and that will make America great again. Maybe that's what Donald thinks. Uh, um, but he certainly doesn't see Ukraine as a protagonist or a main as a main protagonist, but that gives Ukraine an edge because it's got in President Zelensky and some of the people around him, people who do think through, not using the terms of Disinfolklore or thinking through what they're dealing with as we think about art or script writing. Um, but they have that basis where they and President Zelensky has this intuitive sense of understanding character and archetypes and storytelling and how characters can change and must change and do change. And therefore, if you can harness that, whether it's in the propaganda or Disinfolklore or your own nightly speech, you yourself can in real time transform the character of Ukraine into re-archetype it into what it substantively is and has been for the past 6,000 years, the key and the origin and the source of innovation in Indo-European culture. And I note en passant, if you'll pardon my French, that polling today was reported that President Zelensky's at 61 or 62% in Ukraine. So he won the election on 64% in 2019. And now, 7 years later, and all that has happened, and billions, zillions of memes, zillions of disinfolklore from Donald, from Putler, helped by missiles, the complicité between the missiles and the stories about the missiles, the fear and the future and Ukraine capitulation. Well, despite all of that, President Zelensky's popularity or level of popularity persists and subsists. And that demonstrates how we can defeat disinfolklore. Uh, uh, the stories and the stories about the events like missile strikes, like about corruption, about all of the nonsense. And Ukraine gives us great example. And so again, we can think about it as the character who's on a journey, the hero's journey or the heroine's journey, and she begins life as on 64%. And now she's still on 61% after all of these travails and adventures. And yeah, well, that probably wouldn't make a real hit. You really want her to go up in popularity or down in popularity. But I just make this observation from the point of view of thinking that these disinfolklorists will necessarily win, and that disinfolklore necessarily manipulates. Obviously, we do see it does have great effects in some places at some times, and it has had in the past in Ukraine. Um, but at the moment, it's a good example about how we can overcome it. And yeah, I'll leave it at there for tonight, actually, because it's quite late. I've got to go. But thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for this opportunity. Out.
Thank you for everything that you do, and in particular, this last idea about, that Ukraine should be part of Russia. I just want to quote something that Putin said in his horrible essay that really was his declaration of war and his declaration of genocide. And the only reason I do this is because I think after what you said about Zelensky and his popularity, it really fits. So, just to go with the proper title of this by Vladimir Putin is on the historical unity of Russians and Ukrainians, and the point that I want to get to is really the very last lines in this document. And here's what he says. His ending words in this essay is Russia has never been and will never be anti-Ukraine. And what Ukrainians will be, it is up to the people to decide.
That's very important,
Anyways,
James.
anyway, it's just complete bullshit, isn't it? As we've seen, Wendy. So, I decoding. I thank you again for your time and your wonderful analysis. Keep at it. I think if you ever come to some groups, you may want to use somebody besides Trump as the description, and then I think you could really affect other groups. So maybe I'll do that sometime. Talk about this stuff in front of somebody, but I think it'd be better from you. Anyways, so decoding, I guess next up is going to be point 8 in your system. I'm looking forward to that. And then also, before you go, wonders never cease in terms of what does upset these horrible people that take on these roles and become these very negative characters in Disinfolklore. And I just gotta say, I was cracking up a lot when you talk about poopy pants in the Oval Office. Oh my God. Anyway, so thank you for that. That was a kind of very joyful moment to hear about his embarrassment, if he can be embarrassed. And he's probably just getting angrier and angrier at everybody because of it. But I'm laughing at it. So that puts me in a good mood. So is that a positive troll or what, Wendy?
Oh, well, I guess it depends on your perspective. I did note that Bull Terrier had his hand up, which is now down, and Monica, you tried to come up. I approved you, and then you disappeared, and now you're back down to listen. I don't know what's going on. Twice I approved people as speaker, and then they disappeared. So I don't know. Twitter's being weird today. So
No,
Monica, if you wanna come up, please
I'm here.
request again.
I'm here. If
Go
that's
ahead, Bull
okay.
Terrier.
Yeah. So yeah, I just had a comment for decoding because he mentioned the CSTO, and it seems like Russia is still pushing the strength of the CSTO. But I just wanted to note that Armenia has applied for EU accession, and since Russia failed to defend Nagorno.
One point of agreement that I strongly share with him is on the value of anecdotes, and he made several references to the tales of woe shared with us by the lovely mockers from the northwest of England in the wee hours of the morning, my time. And I think there's value in two important respects, these anecdotes. One is because I'm a data person. I actually usually don't trust my intuition and really don't trust sob stories so much because I realize the sob story is just one data point. And, I'd always rather see a spreadsheet with millions of data points released out to be concerned about any issue of public policy. By the way, radio check, you can still hear me?
It's you have a lot of background going on, but we can hear you if you can get closer to the mic.
Okay, well, it's pretty damn close to my mouth. I'm driving right now. If it sounds like crap, just tell me and I'll hang up. But
no, we can understand.
Very good. Okay, I just want to make sure. You wouldn't believe how many times I blabbed on a space thinking I was talking for 20 minutes, and I realized at the end of it, nobody heard me the entire time. That's happened to me it happens to me once a week at least. But anyway, the anecdotes are important because, number one, there just is no data. When we, there are anecdotes of both anecdotes can be important both about what's happening on the battlefield and also what's happening back home in Russia. We know the war is being fought in both places. On the battlefield, we saw anecdotes as long as 2 years ago, basically telling us that Russian troops are driving around in beat up old, crappy civilian cars. What does it tell us? It means they don't have enough armor. And why that anecdote, that video is important is because Russia's not going to release how many vehicles they've got left. The Ukrainians do put out numbers about how many are destroyed, which gives us some information, but it doesn't tell the full story. The picture of dudes with donkeys or with crappy civilian cars tells a story. And an anecdote sometimes has to suffice when we don't have data points. And the same thing is true back home. Even in the best of times, we really can't trust macroeconomic data put out by the Russian Federation government, or by the Chinese for that matter. And we can trust it even less so now. And there isn't that much data coming out, frankly. So hearing a tale of woe about a factory being closed or about a municipality somewhere in the middle of East Bumfuck, Siberia that can't make payroll, these tales are important. They paint a picture because maybe that's the best information we have right now. So that's a long-winded way, and most things I do are long-winded. That's a long-winded way of saying an anecdote is particularly important when we don't have data. The other way it's important is I think some people are better reached by an anecdote, a story about a person that they can relate to. It reaches different types of people in different ways. I'm not really the type of person who that generally reaches. Again, I'm a spreadsheet geek, but for some people, it hits home more strongly. And, we need to reach different types of people in the audience to try to persuade them. And for some people, an anecdote works better than the spreadsheet. Anyway, that's my big point of agreement on Decoding's dissertation from today. Here's a minor point of disagreement. I obviously agree with his broader point, which is his broader thesis and the broader purpose of his work, which is to demonstrate that Russia is trying to perpetuate a narrative. And I would describe that narrative in the most simplest terms is that Russia is good, and two, Russia is winning. Russia is good is an old narrative. I remember being 10 years old and reading copies of Soviet Life, which was their like version of Time magazine, which is a magazine that came out once a month just to tell you that everything is idyllic in the Soviet Union. And that's kind of what RT does today, right? Ruski Mir is great. Sasha meets Russia. Russia's wonderful. Tucker Carlson in the supermarket. Look how great things are in Ruski Mir. So that's one part of the narrative. The other part is Russia is winning. You can't beat Russia. Nobody can beat Russia. Russia always wins. Russia is mighty. Ukraine is losing. – 10% at most actually would say they support Russia. The other 20 or 22% just don't give a crap. I think the problem with Western support for Ukraine is not how broad it is. It's pretty broad and it's stayed pretty broad. I don't think that many, and people hate Putin. Putin's popularity ratings in the West are terrible. So I don't think Russia's winning the propaganda war to the extent of convincing people that they're good or they're winning. I just think the 70% who support Ukraine don't support them enough. I've been saying for years that support in the United States for Ukraine is broad, but it's not deep. Of that 70% who support Ukraine, I think there's a handful of people like you two, our host here, and me, who just are incredibly passionate and informed about it. And there's a lot of people who just know that they want Ukraine to win, but don't care that much. And God forbid that they be asked to pay $26 more in taxes to help Ukraine, or to be put off in any way, or put off or bothered. Or for their countries, let's say hypothetically we put air defense in Western Ukraine, and maybe 26 Western soldiers died every year serving Ukraine. That would be some kind of tragedy because we don't want to sacrifice for that. It's not important. That's kind of a long-term problem in American society, and it's not a new problem. Um, it was hard in World War II before Pearl Harbor for Roosevelt to get into the war. He really wanted to get into the war long before Pearl Harbor, but he didn't dare do it. He was afraid of the political consequences. He was able to get Lend-Lease through, and that was true, and that was a significant thing. You're wrong. But it wasn't really enough. But I think, Roosevelt wanted to do more. I think we have this problem even with well-meaning Western leaders, like the current leaders in Germany and France and the UK, and with President Biden. They support Ukraine, and they've given meaningful help to Ukraine. It's not like they didn't do anything, but they can't quite go the whole distance to give Ukraine everything it really needs. And they're just afraid of the lackluster depth of support of voters. And I think the problem may, in some ways, be even worse in Europe. I mean, can you imagine Poland, Germany asking if they want to raise their taxes to be raised to help Ukraine, or German soldiers to be at risk? In other words, they support Ukraine, but not if it's going to cost them anything. And so I think the battle here isn't so much is overcoming the Russian narrative. I don't think the Russian narratives are winning over people in the West. It's persuading the leaders in the West that it's worth going out on a political limb to do more for Ukraine. Reminding them of the 70%. That's good politics because most people support Ukraine. And rallying the public to ask for more, to demand more of their politicians. I think that's where the battle is at right now. Russia's not convincing people they're good, but they're just sowing enough doubt in the West to hold back Western leaders from taking those extra steps, like grabbing Russian assets, sending Taurus missiles, sending Tomahawk missiles. They just aren't going the distance for Ukraine. I think that's the job of us people who are passionate, to convince the other people in that 70% who like Ukraine, but we have to convince them it's worth, frankly, raising your taxes a little bit, or even putting a few Westerners in harm's way.
Thank you, Monica. Thanks for your excellent analysis as always. You made some really excellent points about support for Ukraine being broad but not deep. That's a very good way to put it. And we definitely need to work on the way that we put those messages out there. And you mentioned that things are different in different places in terms of how they're portrayed, and I wanted to transition to that to an article I put in the nest. Unless James, you have any comment, I'll go into that.
I think that we have so many audiences, and Timothy Snyder's comment in The Road to Unfreedom about how we now have a what do you call it, a war space that really is or a war space that has like 9 billion different fronts, and that is because information gets to each one of us individually. So I think that Monica is essentially right in this, and that yes, a key thing to do is get the leaders of countries to go beyond where they are in support of Ukraine. But I think that Timothy Snyder's right, that, and there are so many people who are in different places. And so we have to be sort of concerned about everybody. But the focus, I understand, being on the leadership, um, that has to be driven, I think, by a popular upswell. And so in the United States, the only country I'm really have any glimmer of, it is important for us to wake up our leadership and get them to poke the president, so to speak.
Yeah, good luck with that. Now, poke him to what? Change his diaper?
Thanks again for that. Oh, poopy pants in the Oval Office. Anyway.
Okay. The article I wanted to bring up was about AI and how AI interprets things differently in different languages. So this I'll just read it. It says a new study exposes AI's alarming language bias, and it's not neutral. A groundbreaking EU-funded study just dropped a bombshell. When asked about the war in Ukraine, AI models repeated Russian propaganda in up to 86% of responses when the question was asked in Russian, but switched to English or Ukrainian, the narrative flips. Researchers tested 6 major language models across 3 languages, and the results are staggering. The same AI that provides balanced answers in one language becomes a mouthpiece for misinformation in another. So, this is another really good sigh.
So
Sigh.
yeah, my reply again. Thank you for that. Really, really informative reference. I'm going to look into this some more. I do like to use artificial intelligence, but it does come with biases for sure. Um, and it is something that we'll have to look out in the future. Well, probably for the rest of our lives, and it just reinforces the need for us to uh, see what we can do about informing people more accurately who are in other domains than ours. I'll say domains. Decoding might say different universes, and maybe that is a good, better way, even perhaps to talk about that. And it's really good, I think, if we can, speak to Russia. And this is the big problem: we can't speak to Russia directly, and so they hear what the government says. Can we beat that? Excuse me, I just muted everybody but me. Um, and you, Wendy. Um, can we speak to Russia directly? Can we break through their cone of silence that they all have to wear in Russia? If we can, one of the greatest security guarantees that we might secure is the will of Russian people to be friends with Ukraine based on a true understanding of their war. But it's so horrific, most Russians are going to run away from that because the mind protects itself from the deeply held beliefs that we have. Wendy.
Yeah, it brings me back to something I've brought up before, even here. People believe what they want to believe. My one of my friends, her partner is a Ukrainian person from of was ethnically Russian, and he refuses to believe that Russia targets civilians on purpose. It's an accident, or they were aiming for something military and missed. So even that's here, even in the United States, for those who pay attention to the Russian speaking community. And it's a really hard thing to battle. Jenny?
So I had to come up when you were talking about the LLM and how they adjust according to language. It's not just those. Your search engine does too. If you speak more than one language and you do searches in several languages, then it will pop out. So for me, Google, for example, it will actually ask me all languages or just one specific language. So even though I put in a sentence in Swedish, it will pop out responses like relevant hits that are in like French, German, and other languages, not just Swedish. And depending on which language I used, I get different I get different information from Google. Um, Most specifically, the one that pops into my head because it's the latest one. And there were 10 Norwegian conscripts who were supposed to they were sent off on a mission as a part of their training. And they were supposed to meet up at 8 o'clock in the morning, like the next day, or if it was like in 3 days, doesn't really matter. The important part is these guys never showed up. The rendezvous time came and went. And then when I was searching for these missing conscripts in English, I didn't get any hits. There had never been a missing Norwegian conscript. But when I put it in Swedish, all of a sudden I got loads of hits in both Norwegian and Swedish media. So you we don't always get all of the information. This is not a plug to, learn more languages, but it kind of is, because you will miss out on information. Anyways, thank you guys for a great show.
Jenny, I think that is a fascinating result, and the resolution I see it in terms of the integration of information from across languages. First of all, it is probably moderated by political means, is my suspicion. But let's say it's not. Let's just say it's a language confusion issue. Then I think the AI has to create or somehow um, integrate all the information from across languages and into a single data set, and that is what essentially they do. And so most of the responses you get from AI are created out of their local database of information, which is huge, but doesn't necessarily reach out to the web because it's stored a lot of that online. And the comparison about reporting of events is something that I think would be very informative. So, take any particular airstrike, for example, in Russia, and get the Russian version of it and get the English or whatever. And I think we start to see the differences, and we understand even better how the enemy lies to us, and lies, more importantly, to their own people, who then support the war. Because this is a war for Russia's survival and all this bullshit, and it ain't. But anyway, thank you, Jenny.
Yes, thanks, Jenny. That's a really fascinating point, and I was really not aware that that things would come up differently in different languages just on a simple Google search. It's an interesting world, and I see Iwana has her hand up. She's quite an expert in AI, so it'd be great to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you. Basically, you are right. LLMs are searching first in the language in which they are prompted. Only if specifically prompted, they will search for sources in other languages. So if they are prompted in Russia, they will search for Russian sources, and of course there will be a bias because you know how the Russian news are, and it also matters how they are prompted. For example, I was investigating some time ago something about the claims of mistreatment of Russian citizens in Donbass or whatever, and I asked something about this, and it started to generate the Russian narrative, and I said, ho, stop, this is false, and immediately admitted it and practically changed course. So it depends a lot on how it is prompted. But what I wanted to mention was not about the LLMs, it was about your friend's experience in US and the fact that she believes that Russians could not, absolutely not, target civilians, and it's just a mistake, it's just collateral damage, it's just misreporting or something like this. And I wanted to mention about the source. The source matters. And in general, it matters the first source in which you made an opinion about the subject. I wrote about it in my Substack, and I just want to stress the importance of this because people get stuck in an opinion, they get entangled in a community, but very often they are influenced by one voice or a few voices and practically ignore the rest. So if first when the war started or if she had like a trusted person or an authority figure saying look, it's like this, it's very likely that for a long time that person will believe this and will only regard sources that align with that view and will disregard any other sources. And if evidence, overwhelming evidence, is presented, there is this migration towards a lateral state because of the cognitive dissonance. So basically, when we hold in our head two opposite thoughts, for example, Russians are bad, Russians are good, and somebody, or we believe Russians are good, and somebody shows us with overwhelming evidence that Russians are bad, there is this cognitive dissonance phenomenon that happens, and it's very costly for the brain. It's very costly to be in this state. So you try to get out of it, and you have some possibilities. You can just ignore the new evidence if you can, but if it's overwhelming, probably it's difficult. You can accept the new evidence and accept this new position and accept the fact that you were wrong all the time, which is very difficult. Or there is the lateral escape to say, yeah, both are bad. You know, yeah, the Russians are bad, but the Ukrainians are bad too, and everybody is bad, and worse is just the humanity's general way of solving things, and I just want it to end. You know, this is the cynical meta collapse. Everybody is bad, and it's the most dangerous position in which a citizen can be for democracy, because in this state of cynical meta collapse, he is very, very influenceable. Is very very prone to be influenced in a certain way. Because, for example, if somebody said, "Yeah, it's the political class, we have to change the system," and somebody presents himself like, "I will change the system. I will stop all the abuses. I will change this," and this is Trump. Trump is a candidate of the cynical meta collapse. And right now we are seeing what is happening with the Epstein files. And instead of having, the missions in the Congress, instead of having Trump uh, humble and, saying that, well, I'm sorry or whatever, instead of all this, we are seeing again the fact that, he says, yeah, the system is bad, but it's a hoax, and I will change the system. And believe me, it's all, it's all about this fight with the other, the bad one, and I'm the good one. So yeah, sorry, I was a little bit disorganized, but I just wanted to mention this. So just to to make a summary, source is very important. The first source is very important. The alignment of the person is very important. When challenged, there is this possibility of falling into this psychological state of cynical meta collapse, and persons in that state are very, very vulnerable, and also it's very dangerous for democracies in general, because this can you can be
Yeah,
very smart.
his mother.
There are people that are very smart and stupid in the same time, and you can be very smart and still fall for it. That's the paradox.
Yeah, I know his mother doesn't speak English, and that he came to the United States as a child. So, they're Russian-speaking Ukrainians. She mentioned at the beginning of the full-scale invasion that they, sat there watching their home village be bombed. But he believes that the Russians are, not doing things on purpose. And I found it really disturbing. I see Monica, you had your hand up and now it's down. Are you?
Yeah. Well, oh no, I need a new phone. I need a new phone. I need a new phone, and I'm stupid for not doing it because I'm not under contract, and I know my company, of course, will give me a new phone if I give them a security interest in my soul for the next 5 years. So I can probably go get a free phone right now. But anyway, yeah,
Better, much better.
AI. AI is really good at sucking in words and data and spewing it right back out. So what AI kicks out is only as good as what comes in. It's really terrible at qualitatively assessing data or the reliability or credibility of the source of the data. A really funny anecdote. I have no idea if this is true. Obviously, anything you read on social media has to be taken with a grain of salt. But there's a story that this guy kind of gave his bot access to some of his financial accounts, and the bot was trying to make money for him and signed him up for a get-rich-quick seminar that promised to double your money in 30 days. And the bot rationalized, wow, I paid $33,000 for this seminar, and I can double our capital in 30 days. So the bot actually made a good decision if that promise was true. Now, almost any human being could look at that promise of doubling your money in 30 days for a $3,000 seminar as a bunch of garbage. But the AI really can't. The AI just sucks in the data and kind of assumes everything's true. Now, maybe the AI will develop the sophistication over time to make those sort of qualitative assessments, but I just don't think it's very. So I'm a late adopter on AI. I realize like a lot of my colleagues I work with have been using it for some time. I don't.
Sounds
It
like
might be
I
fine.
think we lost you, Monica.
Am I back? Radio
you're
check.
back. You're back.
I'm sorry. If you tell me it's not worth it, interrupt me, okay? It's like I'm in and out, and it just sucks for the audience. But anyway, long and the short of it is, AI sees out what it sucks in, and I think that raises the specter. I'm sure this has got to be happening already. I remember like back in the day, way back in the old days of the internet, like the late 2000s, like 2007, it was all about search engine optimization and placement. Moving yourself up on Google. Of course, you can pay Google to do that. That's no secret. It's never been exactly a level playing field, but now I think it's got to be moving into AI optimization. In other words, the consultant who will get you promoted in AI is somebody who knows how the AIs work. By the AIs, I mean the popular ones that most people use, like on the Google search engine or Grok or ChatGPT. People who know exactly how information gets harvested and what gets harvested. And I think once you know what gets harvested, you have to find places you can put information online cheaply and easily that will get harvested. And of course, the way to do it is have a bot just generating loads of worthless content that no human's going to ever read, whose sole function is to get sucked up by AI. And I'm sure that's happening already, and it is getting sucked up and influencing AI outcomes.
Thank you, Monica. Those are excellent points once again. Yenny, you had your hand up, and then we have Mary, but Iwana's waving.
Yeah, I just wanted to add two things about AI. We consider them probabilistic machines, but they are also heuristic machines. They will go for the easy thing first, because they have to prioritize the tokens. So the easy answer will be the first. That's why they don't get to search deep for things. They kind of deliver the first thing, unless you prompt it, repeatedly in a certain way. That's my first thing. And second, for Monica, if you want to read the AI acceleration engine uh, in my Substack, I think you will find this interesting.
Yeah, I think the whole thing with AI, and I've made it clear I'm not really a fan of AI. However, I will say AI is much more polite when you prove it wrong than the average human person, um, which I find very, nice when I prove Grok wrong. It's very appreciative of it, unlike most people where they will argue with you till they're blue in the face, even though they have no facts to support it. And I also wanted to say, for a lot of things, it's not about intelligence of people who believe things, because I feel the same way. Like, I can have a whole stack of facts to disprove something, and they still want to be like, well, no, 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 you're wrong. Like, their whole life and their identity is now part of whatever is happening in the country. And so to prove them wrong, or for them to admit that they are wrong, it's not it's almost like everything that they have based their entire however many years off of, and their identity off of, is also wrong. And so that's why it's so much harder nowadays to have productive conversations with people, and everything else, because back in the 80s and the 90s, policy and politics, it wasn't nearly as much of people's identities, like, as what I feel like it is today. But that's just my personal opinion. Thanks, guys.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Mary. Hey, this is a fascinating conversation about AI, and we are seeing the results of it probably in all of our work. And what I've detected about AI engines, importantly, is that Grok seems to have a decided slant, even more than most, about what's going on in the world. And so we have to consider who really owns these things, who do they align with. And I have to say, in general, most of them are connected to oligarchs in one way or the other as owners or such. But there's still degrees of difference amongst all the different machines that are out there. I think that one of the things that's incredibly important is potentially, if you've got space and wherewithal, to have your own little machine to do some of these things that will still access the internet. It won't, your whole database of the world isn't going to fit on on your phone, for example. But I do think that there's some analysis that is best done by doing that and asking the machine to get you citations of the sources, and that way they, if they're not already in there, ask them to look out on the internet. And there are different settings for that. I know in some where it's like just smart is like the lowest level, is what they say, which is often stupid. And then there's like give me citations forces it to actually go out to the internet if they haven't already stored citations to facts, that it will go out and get them. So there's all kinds of things that we can do to help it along. And getting an answer from two different computers or two different AIs doesn't necessarily help. They may be reaching into the same kind of fact set that's there. And one of the greatest dangers is that the facts that they've got will change over time. And if they're if they're referencing each other as sources of information or truth, then we're really in trouble. And I believe that's where we're heading. So we have to be careful about how we're going to manage these as societies. Russia decided years and years ago to say we're going to spend at least $5 billion on AI because we think there's a good cause for it. And what has the United States done in terms of that? I'm sure there are many AI systems that are working inside our government, but one to help us identify misinformation, disinformation, disinfolklore, we have turned that option down multiple times to access all of the social media platforms that just the public access, nothing private, just the public access that we all have. We could learn so much about disinformation, disinfolklore, whatever you want to call it, and we could warn people, but we don't. So we are opening ourselves and the children in our society to all kinds of malign influence. And so, yeah, we have to be careful. What do I see that Juana's got her hand up again, and then Mary?
Yeah, so if you allow me.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Should I let Mary first?
Yes, please go ahead, Iwana.
Oh, okay. So I had something for Mary. You can search it on my Substack. There is a piece that I called an article that I called Diet Cola, and it's exactly about what you talked about. So basically, the difficulty of changing your mind when you are stuck in a narrative. I call this entanglement. I'll come back to that. And it's not just the sunk cost, the fact that you invested in something, that you are part of a community, that you maybe, argued with friends about this, or even broke some relations because of this. It's not just the sunk cost, but it's also a forward cost, because you have to admit that you are wrong. You have to admit that part of your identity was shaped on false premises, and you will have to reintegrate in the world having another worldview, which is very difficult. So you can find this in the article that is called Diet Cola. I think it's a little bit funny because it's about the fees and about the fact that we are both fickle and stuck in the same time. So if you allow me, just because you spoke about this, about the risk and the acceleration, I started to work on this, or let's say 6 months ago, but actually it was because of the shock with the elections in Romania. When I saw in front of my eyes how a big part of my country was manipulated through these influence operations. And it was kind of strange, and I won't get into it. I have a case study done. I thought it's too late to present it because it's more than a year, but right now it resurfaces from US, saying that the decision of the Constitutional Court was wrong, and so on and so forth. So maybe I will publish this case study that is based on information from different sources, including the French intelligence agency, the Bulgarian one, Stravdi from Ukraine, and of course our secret services here. So maybe I will publish this case study. But I started there trying to understand this phenomenon. And yes, I do use quantum language. And you will say it's a woo-woo. It's something strange about it, because I use this, superposition, collapse, entanglement, interference, things, tunneling, things like this. But these concepts work like a metaphor, for the things that are happening. For example, superposition is when you are holding multiple type of beliefs in your head and you are not resolved yet. You are not, saying this is true, this is false. And all the others, I can explain all them, but maybe it's not the time here. So if you want to search about this, I invite you to read this, and I will maybe publish this case study for Romanian elections soon. I hope this week. And to what you said, James, Yes, this AI is now interfering with the content on social media, and to be very clear, I'm just talking about algorithmic platforms. I'm not talking about reality, about scientific research and other stuff. Just social media like X, like TikTok, like others. So it's interfering through four mechanisms. The first is the text, generating text. There are bots that are reposting text. There are articles. There are, circular loops. The same article is posted in 100 sources with very small differences. And when you search for something, you find 100 references, and you say it must be true because there are 100 sources that are claiming the same. But it's so easily done, especially with AI. The second is video and photo. AI is now generating images and videos that are very difficult to differentiate from the real ones. And basically, this leads to a visual meta collapse, to distrusting everything. If you cannot believe your eyes, you cannot believe anything. And again, this is very, very dangerous. The third one is the algorithm, and we know that on X already Grok is controlling the algorithm. So basically, it will select things that are, good for engagement. And good for engagement usually, I mean, doesn't necessarily mean a correspondence with reality. If there is something very, powerful as energy, it will select that. And energy means emotion, or means a source with higher authority, or things like this. And the fourth one is the Ouroboros, the autophagous loop. The fact that AI is now trained on social media and basically is fed with elements from social media, and basically it will see that the posts that are optimized for engagement are more successful, and it will optimize even more. So basically, this loop will reinforce itself. So yeah, it is a danger. And for now, we have like estimated between 20% to 40% generated by AI. By the end of this year, it will be much more because it's very easy actually. And we see now the agentic AI, the agents that are used in different ways, and they will be used on social media much more than until now. Sorry for speaking so long. Back to you.
Please do post a few of your links to your Substack items that you just spoke about into the nest before we go, which we're not going anywhere for a while. So you have time. That would be very helpful. And you should promote yourself that way. Take the opportunity, please. I want to thank you very much for the insights. I think it's a very a good analogy or metaphor. Analogy, it is analogous to the way that the brain works. And so I think there's a lot of good reason to look to that as a useful model. So appreciate that. But I see, Wendy, that well, first, back to you, Wendy. I'm sure you have ideas as well. So before we go to Mary, you should have your chance.
Well, you said it all, James. I was gonna suggest to Alana that she put links to her Substacks in the nest and or the purple pill, whatever works best. So your analyses, Alana, are always really appreciated and very insightful. So yeah, please promote yourself. Mary?
Thanks so much, guys. Yeah, I would be really interested in what you wrote, Ayana. I also one of the things that really scares me with the whole AI thing, though, is, and I've talked about this before, is how it changes the way, especially our younger people, think. Like I can't tell you in the one post that where Grok said it was a fake video, but yet a simple Google search showed that the guy there was follow-up news interviews with him proving it wasn't a fake video. But yet the number of people who in this thread just was like, Grok, is this real? And Grok had said, no, it's not real, that it was a skit, when it wasn't a skit. But yet all of them take whatever Grok says as it being 100% factual. And they know, and they don't do the search themselves to figure out whether or not what they're seeing with their eyes is real. And that's what I worry about, like, as far as we're really, really dumbing down the population, in my opinion, by by using AI rather than having kids actually have to research for themselves and use their brains. But that's just my opinion. And I feel like that is very much the intent of some of these people who have designed some of these AI and things. They don't want a population that thinks for themselves. But that could just be me being a conspiracist. Thanks, guys.
Well, I think you're onto that. That is a fact. I think, indeed, and what they really want is for AI to have all the answers. So Big Daddy has the answers, and here they are. And that's not formulating anybody's brain to think independently. It just doesn't work that way. So I appreciate that. And there are countries in the world who are blocking social media for children. I think it's something that is worth consideration. I'm thinking of Australia primarily. This experiment will be interesting to watch, and I think there's much to be gained from it, and especially blocking AI tools. For kids, except to find resources. I think that there's a number of reasonable limitations and ways that you could control what kids could access, especially during the school year. It could even be something like it's okay, school's out for most people in this country, so okay, we're turn it on. But it really is important that we develop our own mode of research and analysis. And without those, I don't think that we're really fluent in today's world, Wendy.
Sorry, I was on another screen. I agree. I agree. And Iwana knows a lot more about it than me. So please go ahead, Iwana.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that AI is falling into the category of authority. So AI has access to all the knowledge, so AI must be right, And it looks like an authority figure. And because Grok was used in the past uh, and gave useful answers in many of the cases, not all, of course, but many of them, it's used as an authority. If Grok says, it must be true. Which of course is not true because everybody can be wrong, including AI. And we know about the phenomenon of hallucinations. We know what they are. We know why they happen. We know how to take care of them. But still, for people, it's very easy to go to this, oracle or I don't know, um, the one who has the truth, I don't know how to call it, and ask if it's true, and Grok will answer, of course, because it's always available, and everybody will believe what Grok says, which I said it before, might not be true, because as I said, AIs are also heuristic machines, and they will prioritize for simplicity, not necessarily for in-depth knowledge.
Thank you for that.
And yeah, I just want to add, I don't think I can post things in the nest, but I will post them in the comments to the space. Okay.
Okay, if you put them into the back channel in our regular channel, then I will repost them. How's that? Okay, got a thumbs up there. Let me just check. We had a speaker who hasn't raised a hand yet. At least maybe it's possible. I have hand blindness. But Kariana, I see that you are a speaker. Maybe you were just nodding off and dropped your thumb on the button. But I just wanted to offer you the opportunity to speak. And also, Huckleberry, I do see you. It looks like you are getting popped up and down by the Twitter Tumblr, but we'll get you back up. So, anyways, I guess Cariana, we'll wait and see what you have to say or not. Anyways, so Wendy, we do have another speaker. This is a great conversation. I do not want to cut it off because I think these are we're talking about the battlefield that we're fighting on right now, and we want ammunition, not a ride, so to speak. So this is a great place to get it today. This space has been really informative about the tools that are available to us to do battle. And we get a lot from Disinfolklore because it also is a kind of our yeah, what do I want to call it, body armor. Yes, it is, it's like our body armor, part of it is. And that's so important, and understanding these things about AI is more protection for us from these kind of horrible patterns that have developed in well, in often intentional patterns that have developed. So anyways, unless you have something, Wendy, I'll wait. I'll just turn it over to you instead of saying that way.
I just wanted to make a quick comment, from Iwana's comments. It seems almost like, Grok and these other AI things are kind of like the new version of Wikipedia, where you don't necessarily know that it's true. It shouldn't, it's a good reference, but that should be your starting point, not your end point in terms of research. That's what I used to tell my students. Go ahead, look at Wikipedia, but go to the original sources. The only problem is with Grok and AI, you can't really. Well, I guess you could ask it to give you its sources. I don't know. But you don't know where it's getting the information from. At least with Wikipedia, they, list references at the bottom. So it's an interesting phenomenon.
Searching, and it forces it to go beyond its internal resources of information out to the internet to nail down these references. And so that's a good method, is to ask for references to be listed, or the URL for all of the references that were used. And if there's things that are backed up, and ask it also, if you have items that you're pulling on your internal information without an external reference, please list those as based on internal knowledge or something like that. It's just, you have to get so specific with AI. Like, I asked a question recently and it didn't do it the way I wanted. It clumped everything by country, and it's like, no, that's not what I asked for. Anyway, so you have to be really careful. Anyway, I'm going on too long. And I saw Huckleberry.
We lost him
Rats,
again. We lost
Huckleberry.
him again. Yeah, I know. Oh, there you're back in listener, Huckleberry fella. Request again, and we won't make you wait. We'll hurry up and get you up. Oh, there he is requesting. Good.
As soon as you can, just start talking. Go ahead, Huckleberry.
Hey guys, sorry, I don't know why it keeps dropping in and out. Incredibly interesting conversation. Fascinating. I think particularly a few quick points. Regarding the education aspect, it's gonna be tricky to have kids. Don't get me wrong, I agree with limiting social media. There's a lot of control standards they need to get looked at, but it's hard to say AI is the future, and kids, you should not study AI. Because I know IT professionals are regularly judged on, how up to date you are, and that's anyway. Moving on, you've gone just quickly agricultural, industrial, post-industrial. People worrying about jobs, understandable, but it depends what you put that AI into. So, for example, if it was efficiency on a power grid, that's amazing. Doesn't seem to be the case at the moment. And just like a weird, quick thought experiment slash, for my friends and family that know I have a good sense of humor, I was like, I'm going to create an AI bot that sends you the best happy birthday message with all the pictures of us and sincere messages. So, like, unless it's your family or immediate close ones, you don't know all your friends' birthdays. So when they text me back saying, hello, oh, thank you, that was great, I say, what? And they said, for the birthday. And I go, I didn't even know it was your birthday, but you're welcome. And I'll leave you on that.
Thank you. Hey, that's a really good point about proficiency in AI versus using AI to learn or supposedly learn about other topics, which is the great worry with children, is that they'll be assigned to maybe a book report, right? And so you say, "Oh, give me a book report on the road to on freedom," for example. Well, that does not educate the child in the same way. It might be a nice summary, but that's sort of not the point. The point, in fact, you could get a much lower grade if all you did is read the summary, or even if all you did in your, let's say, PhD thesis, or I'm sorry, dissertation, if you were to say everything was based on CF or cited from, and all you did was read the latest summary book on it, that would not be legitimate for education purposes. So you make a very good distinction, Huckleberry. You got to come back on that.
Yeah, just quick points on that. As people were mentioning Grok, I'm assuming you guys have maybe seen, but there are bot accounts that interact with Grok all day long, saying, "How haven't they ended the Ukraine war? Oh my God, that's tragic." And it sounds like a heartfelt human place, which, as you look at Grok processing, it says, "Oh yeah, I know, it's absolutely terrible," with no context. Um, it just, it's a wild consideration.
So you're saying that these bots feed Grok with information that then it then uses in its responses. Is that what you're saying, Huckleberry Fella? And Mary will get you in just a second.
Yeah, that's correct. I can try to find some screenshots.
Huckleberry's being actively blocked, it appears, Wendy, at least from my ears.
Yeah, I can't hear you. Can't hear you, Huckleberry Fella.
Try again. Darned if he ain't in
He's back to
listeners.
listener.
Wow. I mean, talk about batting somebody down, Twitter. Anyway, well, Huckleberry, first of all, thank you for all of the very pointed pointed points. Yes, poignant points, whatever. Anyway, let me stop there, Wendy, before I go on a P word. I don't know. Tirade. Anyways, Mary, unless you got some, Wendy. Mary.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if Wendy wanted to say anything. No, I just wanted to say I 100% agree with Huckleberry as far as it's like a line with our kids of making sure they understand AI because it is the future, whether we like it or not, but also understanding the limitations of AI and not relying on it. I have a 13-year-old who is way too smart when it comes to technology. And like he's been arguing with me that he wants me to pay for servers to host his bots. And I'm like, what the hell does any of that mean? But okay. Um, but at the same time, when he gets in trouble for being mouthy, if he wants to cut off some of the time on his punishment, he can write essays. So he had to write a 1,000-word essay on the First Amendment. And he wasn't allowed to use AI or anything like that. He had to cite actual sites and legitimate sources. So like that's where I feel like you have to walk the line of allowing them to understand it and use it where they can, but also not rely on AI to give them information. So thanks guys.
Thanks, Mary. Good, a real life example of AI and its traps. And yes, I think that there are ways to do this through technology to preserve kids' access to it, to learn about AI, but also to learn about its pitfalls and limitations. And I think we can do all of that and protect our countries from malign influence that will the next generation, which I'm afraid that is the point of this. So, Wendy, I see we have Huckleberry and Awana now requesting, but over to you.
No, I just want to, agree with Mary. And I taught at university for many years. It was always a struggle, to get people to go beyond the aggregational things like websites. And it was before AI was prominent, because I've been retired for a little while. And AI just makes it even more difficult to teach students um, how to discern good information from bad, and to do critical thinking. It's a really powerful tool if you use it correctly, as Iwana does, and other people like her, who do utilize it a lot. But it's also a very dangerous tool that people need to learn how to use properly. And I'm not sure whose hand was up first.
Huckleberry.
Hey guys, yeah, completely agree, and especially on the critical thinking, and that's, I think, going back to how it's utilized, because, for example, if you were gonna remove the phones and AI and write a critical thinking piece, the good thing about AI afterwards is you don't have to do monotony and tedious. Like, you could make a paper MLA, Chicago, and Harvard format in 30 seconds, and that's great, but that's not the information involved in the piece. And on that, again, it depends how it's used, but the common denominator I'm finding with that is, no matter what it means, and you see this across the board, is we need more energy, because we need more energy, and we need more energy. And that's, regardless of how it's used, that's what's happening.
Thank you, Huckleberry, for that. Let's just go on to Awana, and then probably Wendy. We should do some more reporting. You've put a lot of things into the nest, and I don't want to detract from Ukraine too much, but this is something that we learn to better fight for Ukraine and better defeat Russia.
Agreed, James. Please go ahead, Iwana.
Yeah, I'll be short. I just wanted to say, James, you put me to work. So I posted the links to, I believe, 7 of my articles in the commentaries. The order is the framework, espresso, diet cola, and then, the source thing, and so on and so forth. So basically, it's kind of in the order in which I posted them. Let's keep the nest on Ukraine. So I'm quite okay if people look in the comments, they will see that. And yeah, that's all. You put me to work. I don't post much on X about this, but I will try to do more.
I am bookmarking all of those then. And thank you very much for doing that. And maybe that's the right way to do this. But when you come out with a new one and you have a chance, make it easy on the listeners, drop it in to the nest, because I think that's even easier for folks. And it doesn't come with the overhead of the link back to the space, if you know what I mean. So, absolutely, thank you very much. Back to you, Wendy.
Thank you, James. Just before we go on to some of the news, did anyone have any other comments on this topic? Sounds like maybe we're good. All right, thank you all for your excellent comments and analyses. That's very much appreciated. And again, this is about disinformation and dealing with it. So we appreciate the insights that all of you bring. The next news article I wanted to bring up was from Katerina Lisanova. It is about the first day of the trilateral US-UA Russia meetings has officially ended in Abu Dhabi. The discussion lasted 5 hours. There's trilateral talks, working group sessions, and more tomorrow. My opinion is that this is a lot more nothing burger, but Ukraine has to go through it. But there you have it. These discussions are ongoing. As I'm sure we all know, Volodymyr Zelensky said that in light of the recent attacks on Kyiv with ballistic missiles and some of the other things that are going on in Ukraine through Russian aggression, that this will affect these talks. And he's also said that they're not giving up any territory. So, every time these talks happen, that comes up, but I highly doubt it. Any comments on that?
Yes, I I think this is essentially pointless, but is the opportunity for Ukraine to have its formal, suggestions listed. I think they are stalling, essentially playing along with what's happening. But I think it harms Ukraine in the following ways. It makes, for one, the intermediary or the country that's asserting itself into the middle of these negotiations, it makes it seem like they're trying to be a good guy settling peace. And when in fact it appears underneath that, by adopting all of the stated goals of the invader, it is showing itself to be underneath that supposedly peacemaking shield, uh, to be an aggressor. In other words, abetting the aggressor in this situation. That's what's come clear to me, is that this is something like many other things. It's just fools people into thinking that, oh, they're good guys because they did one good thing. And I just want to say, the Ferengi, if you know Star Trek, the Ferengi are out for money and everything. And I believe it's the 28th rule of acquisition that says, be nice to your enemies once in a while. It really confuses them. Anyway.
That's a good one to think of. Witkoff and Kushner and those other clowns as Ferengi. That's a really good one. Anyway, I got distracted there. I forgot my train of thought. Yenny, go ahead.
So, that statement, that was a very polite way of saying fuck Russia. It needs to be said in every segment, because they should never forget that we don't like them and that we always think that they should fuck off. Thank you for your attention in this matter.
Witness here that the handcuff of Malcolm Hudson people. Hey there, Silver Lady. Silver Lady, I'm going to close your mic. You raise your hand in our space, please. I brought you up to speak because you're a new speaker. You had a good opening thing, but please raise your hand. If you haven't been watching along, people raise their hands before they speak. So close your mic.
No, I did raise
my
hand.
So close your mic and raise your hand, and I'll call on you. Thank you. But close your mic. Oh, you don't know how to close your mic? I can close it for you.
Oh, it's closed, James.
Okay,
it's
sorry,
closed.
It doesn't appear to me to. Okay, all right.
All right.
So hang on there a minute while we get somebody else up here, and I do appreciate you wanting to come up and speak, but yeah, I didn't see hand, and so please also understand that just because you think your hand is up, not everybody sees it. And what we do is we call on people to control Twitter's errors in handling information, which is they can't properly display who's got their hand up all the time, and they can't always show the mic being closed when it is closed. So we have all kinds of problems that we moderate. Wendy, I think I nailed that in terms of what Twitter does for us in terms of confusing us. But anyway, since you are next, is Silver Lady's hand up, Wendy?
The hand is not up. It's she's back up as speaker.
All right. Do you know how do you raise your hand? It's you push the heart plus button, and over on the far right is a hand, and you press that, and that's how you raise your hand. So that's what I'd like to see. But if you've already done that,
it's there.
There you go. Thank you.
Shall we hear from Silver Lady?
Hi there, yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead.
Oh, so thanks for letting me speak. I'm here to sorry, it's the first time I spoke on here. We're here for collection for aid for Ukraine via the Hugs Help Ukraine support group and the Swindon humanitarian aid group SHAP. We've got a collection day on the Tuesday the 17th of February at Hungerford Town Football Club. We're hoping loads of people will help attend us. We're looking for loads of medical equipment, in-date medications including painkillers such as anything you can buy over the counter, such as ibuprofen, paracetamols, cold and flu remedies, perfect for going out to the front line. We're also looking for medical and surgical supplies, anything, first aid kits. It doesn't matter if they're out of date as long as they're all sealed. We're also looking for sanitary and toiletries, unopened, obviously. Wet wipes, certainly. I'm just going to go through now the things that are highlighted, which we really need to go out to the hospitals and the front line. Clean hiking boots and warm socks, good condition trainers, military grade camo kit, adult size, obviously. We're looking for bedding. It does need to be it needs to be synthetic, not
Organic.
Sorry.
Not like wool or
Yeah, that's
cotton.
it. Yeah. We're also seriously looking for electronics and optics, unlocked laptops, tablets, smartphones and older working mobiles, all with chargers, but they do need to be disconnected from your Apple account because otherwise they can't use them. Just resetting them does not disconnect from the Apple account. We're looking for batteries, power banks, loads of tools, especially working generators and power tools, car accessories, battery chargers, because obviously they're needed on the front line, gloves. Another thing is new now, new tenon hand saws, new tenon hand axes, which I assume they're using to cut down trees on the front line. Obviously, outdoor living, tents, ground sheets. They're also looking for these hot hands because obviously it's really cold out there at the moment. Food, rice, pasta, porridge, tinned meat, fish. Nothing in glass, obviously, but tins and dried food, and obviously pet supplies because let's face it, we know the Ukrainians love their pets. Dog, cat food, animal medications, and other foods. Thanks for listening to me. And that's the 17th of February down at Hungerford Town Football Club. Any supplies are welcome. Any donations are welcome. Thank you. And out.
Thank you, Silver Lady, so much. I'm sorry I maybe handled you a little roughly there, but I wasn't sure who you were exactly. But
it's not a problem, no problem.
You've got a heart of gold doing this kind of work with chapters, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Silver Lady. Peter?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, you were talking about AI earlier, and I just want to give an example of what's happening with AI. I mean, I call our era now the era of fake. Fake in politics, complete lies in politics is now the normal. I remember a few years ago, if you were a politician, you never lied. In fact, if you were caught lying, you had to resign. And the secret of a politician was always being economical with the truth, which meant that they had the skill of avoiding questions they didn't want to answer or felt they couldn't answer. Now it is just blatant lie after lie after lie, and that seems to be the norm. But when we come to AI, I have a very small drone company, and I use that drone. I try and get because I'm quite creative and artistic. I like to get as unique shots as possible, which sometimes means that I kind of risk the drone to get those shots. It goes into quite dangerous places, if you like, etc., etc., etc. But I was looking at the web, and there was one video, which is just one out of now hundreds of videos, and it was of a kitchen, and there was a lady in front of the cooking stoves, and all of a sudden this Alsatian burst through the door, flew and knocked this lady flying, and then the kitchen exploded. And I was horrified at the amount of comments from people who were saying, "Look at that wonderful animal! I can't believe how great animals are. That that dog knew that that kitchen was about to explode, and he shot in to save his owner, and all this." And then you could see blatantly it was totally 100% AI created. And whoever posted it was posting it because they get lots of followings, they get lots of clicks and likes, and they build up their numbers. But AI is now getting so good in videos that you cannot tell the difference between real or fake. And it is a serious problem, I think, with social media now, that everything is fake. People will lie, they'll put out fake information, they'll do this, that, and the other. We have Epstein now, who is, the more and more is coming about Epstein, is that he is actually a Russian tool, that his establishment was a honey trap for powerful, influential men, so that Russia could get hold of blackmail stuff that they needed if they ever needed it. And
Could we stop there? You mentioned three separate topics so far, and I just want to
sure.
address the first one.
Yeah, I'm just kind of rambling a bit, I'm
Okay.
afraid.
Just close your mic for sound effects, but and then you can resume. I just want to reply to this one. You both sided on lying by politicians, and I don't think it's fair. Think on Biden versus Trump, the debate that they had. One supposed misstatement or lie that was said by Biden, 32 absolutely confirmed lies by Trump, and it didn't matter. But it's not true that both sides, every politician lies. It's more acceptable these days, but it is not true. So we have to be more careful in our analysis of truth and falsehood than just saying politicians lie. It just is not so. It's a dangerous statement to uh, come up with as fact. There are people that will lie. Definitely, there will be people that are politicians that make mistakes, but not everybody, and not all the time. So I just want to make that clear, Peter. But you got
Oh,
through three. Wait. Hold on there, Peter. You got through three different topics. You went to drones, and then you went to the third topic, and you wanted to go on to a fourth topic, I think.
no, I won't go on to the fourth. No, I wasn't inferring that every single politician lies. I
Well,
was making. I was making the point that years ago, right, if a politician was caught
You made that
blatantly
point. That's
lying,
enough. Yeah,
yeah,
we get it. We get it. That things have changed. You're right. There's more acceptance of it on the one side, at least. So I got that. Yeah. Thanks.
AI is like any power, it's either for good or for evil. And we just have to make sure that, if people want to put fake videos up or whatever, that they have a watermark on them saying AI or whatever, so that people aren't taken for a ride or, kind of fooled into believing stuff which isn't true. Anyway, that's the only point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Sometimes, but I do want to point out some things. One is that the lies that are coming out of the White House are hurt dwell on it, but it is an essential for any government, any nation, for its government to be lawful. And even Russia, to some extent, makes this happen. They enforce their laws, and we should be enforcing ours. I'm not going to say that Russia enforces all their laws all the time. Far, far from it, because they're signed on to multiple United Nations conventions, and they don't follow those. But when they want to have a law that says, "Oh, well, you can lock people up for, a sheet of paper with no writing on it," then they'll make a law for that. So we are far, far from, or getting far away from that standard of actually holding our government to the law and the Constitution and the standards that we have. So it's not in any reference to news, but it's critical for today.
Yeah, I think that's very critical everywhere. And the only people that seem to be really good at that right now is Ukraine. Their government does something they don't like, or you know threatens their democracy, they're out there, and that's a great thing.
Yep. Okay. Let's see. Well, let's go through some of your stories. You put them up there for a reason.
Okay. I'll go through a few things. There are some, Russia's continuing to attack Ukraine. So I put up a few articles about that. There's a Shahid attack on Odessa, which damaged 20 residential buildings. They bombed a market in Drushkivka, Donetsk. Yay. And and there's another one saying that in Odessa, 5 people are hospitalized and being treated. So there is damage, and there's a lot of suffering ongoing. And to that, I wanted to read an article by Dr. Anna Odesitka, one of my favorite writers. She's back after not being around much for a couple days, and she, to me, really shows the Ukrainian spirit. She really displays it in an interesting way. And she says, "This has been the hardest period in the entire war. We knew it would be. We knew that as Russia collapses and becomes desperate, it will murder more humans and destroy more human lives. But it's different to understand something will happen and actually experience it. All our grandparents saved breadcrumbs. We know why, but it's not something we can relate to. We all know they were starved, but we don't know that feeling of having no food. My future grandchildren won't relate why I boil water just in case I have none and keep my future home heated even in summer. They will know it's because we were frozen, but they won't relate to what it meant to be this cold. They will understand, but they won't relate to it. Generations of my people have been so traumatized that it changed how they live, and not once have Russians been held accountable. This is why individually we decided without even discussion that this is their last genocide. This winter is the last time we will ever be this cold. Winter is ending, and Russia goes with it as it must." And man, I hope she's right. And I'm sure we all do.
Yeah, she says her father is a prophet, and she has sort of that eye in for that kind of thing. She, I think, is getting this right about this is the last opportunity for Russia to do this. Let us hope so, because it's awful what's happening there, and I do think that if Russia it doesn't fall this year, they will in the next. And I see signs myself of it. Whether it's that crazy statement coming from the Duma, from that Grigori guy who was kind of whining about, what's going on and why maybe we should throw in the towel and call it a draw, so to speak. These are signs. That's one of the signs, and so I hope she's right. I think she knows more about it than me. So I'll say that much. She knows more about the situation, and Ukrainians know more about Russia's collapse than I do. But one of the other signs I put into the nest, and I'll just read this. From the desk of Mr. Zelensky. President Zelensky, still very popular, more than our president. Anyways, I thank the Council of the European Union for today's decision. The legal framework has already been approved to provide Ukraine with $90 billion in financial assistance in 2026 and 27. We expect all subsequent steps to be implemented as quickly as possible as well, because these funds are our financial security guarantee. It is important that amid such Russian strikes on our energy sector, Europe is demonstrating that Ukraine will have long term support. This assistance not only strengthens Ukraine across various areas, but also reinforces our position at the negotiating table. It is a significant contribution to the security of all of Europe and to our shared future. Thank you. And I will just add to his statement that this is indeed the dawn of Europe. It really is. We're seeing Europe standing up to be the great defender of democracy right now. And what a timely shift in that. And they are ready. They may feel like teenage countries, and in fact, most of them, as democracies, are quite young still in the scheme of longer term history. But I see Europe is ready to take on this mantle and be the protector of democracy. So I wish them all well.
That's true, James. It's a great thing that Europe is beginning to coalesce and step for democracy. They already have a social system that is much more friendly to the people in general, at least in most European countries, and their happiness quotient reflects that. So that's really important. One comment, Anna's quote brought something up, and also the trilateral talks. What other than being a more or less a nothing burger that Ukraine has to delay and delay and delay to just keep Trump happy or whatever. It serves, and many people have brought this up. It serves to delay. It serves to delay the implementation of sanctions against Russia, of stronger action against Russia, because it's like, we don't want to do this while negotiations are going on. Let's just wait and see what happens. So all these constant negotiations just delay, delay, delay. And if we look at Russia as a dying monster, so to speak, it's going to do whatever it can to delay that death. Some of it is the lashing out that we see in these attacks against Ukrainian civilians, and another part of it is the diplomatic arm, where they just try to hold off um, the consequences of what they're doing and the actions of others. And all that is starting to unravel. One of the posts I put in the nest is Estonia uh, boarded one of the Russian shadow fleet. It's not a tanker, it's a container ship going from, I believe it was Ecuador to St. Petersburg. So Europe is starting to take more action. They seem to be less concerned about Russia's reaction to things like boarding the shadow fleet, or chasing them out of waters, or whatever it is that they try to do. So we see this decline in Russian influence and their effectiveness, and we can see by Anna's attitude, and I'm sure it's the attitude of many Ukrainians, that yeah, it's bad, it's really bad, but this is it, we're done. They got to go, and we'll endure what we have to do until they're finally dead, so to speak. So things are changing. Things are changing in a good way, but there's going to be more suffering and more difficulty, and we'll just be here to support them in whatever way we can.
That's good stuff there, Wendy. And yeah, I just want to reinforce about sanctions. The time to remove sanctions is after your opponent has done at least part of your will. And our will and America's will should be that Russia pays for things, that it stops making genocidal attacks on apartment buildings and such. And then, and only then, do you begin to allow them to have things again that you've taken from them? And so I think it was really important that we drill this into our lawmakers' heads. It's and why I think we need to have some of the proposed laws for Ukraine recast so that they are not it's not contingent on the president's approval, because he is a bad Skinnerian, if you know what I mean. Skinner was a psychologist and you probably know about all of that stuff, and most people do. You either punish or you reward and things like this, and I won't get into it more than that without a textbook in front of me these days. But it's just important that we do that with countries. We only reward them when they've been good after they've done a really bad thing. That's why we got to sanctions. They did a really awful thing, a war of aggression and genocide, and sanctions are due on them and should not be reduced. They should be increased. And the point about war is if it hasn't stopped them yet, do more. Do more. Apply more pressure, more pain, more suffering on the enemy to get them to bend to your will. And I would say Ukraine has done a wonderful job themselves at that. And Europe is really picking up the pace. And I mean, 2020 sanction pact, and I guess the last is ready to come out. These are amazing steps to defeat Russia. So I think that Ukraine and Europe are and they're all one now, I'd say. They're on the right path. So we just need to withhold any goodies until Russia agrees to do what is.
Votes. We have states that I won that show I didn't win. Now you're going to see something in.
It's an article in the Nest showing the shoot down of a Shahed drone with a machine gun. But many of these are with things like shotguns. And one of our fundraisers is for shotgun training for frontline soldiers and civilians to help shoot down all manner of drones. That it's a last ditch defense. But these it seems that possibly this increase in training on how to shoot down drones with things like shotguns is having an effect, and that's something that's quite worthwhile to support. So if you can, we're helping Ivan and his daughter Alexandra with their training program. And there are other training programs. They aren't the only ones doing this in Ukraine. It seems pretty widespread at this point, but they are both really excellent marks persons. They're Ukrainian, and it's important to support them. James?
Excellent. Indeed, the drone war is becoming, and looks like it may be the standard for warfare going forward. And for Ukraine's sake, having every individual stay alive that possibly can, this kind of training is required until they have robotic dogs that do it for them. Handling a shotgun, learning how to time your shot. These are things that are going to be critical skills and for life saving. And so, yeah, that's a really good one. Another one that I'll mention, the Yale humanitarian lab was tracking Russia. Do know in North Korea. So this is an international child trafficking ring, basically, but it's for a lot of reasons. But one of them is to militarize these children so that as soon as they're of age, they can be sent to the front lines to kill other Ukrainians, which is a sad, sad yet old story. This is not something that's brand new. I know that, for example, well, anyways, it certainly happened before or in the run up to the large scale invasion. So this is an old story indeed. So there's that one. And then another thing that, well, let's see, well, we got a lot to point out. And I don't know if we have to point out everyone every time, but let me see. Let me get to it. Boop, 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 boop. This one, April Huggett and Becca Makarowski both deal in the medicine end of this, combat medicine, combat logistics as well for medicine. These are the things that they do, and they're providing critical aid to soldiers who are coming back wounded to some kind of field hospital, and there's medicine that's needed, there's supplies, there's tourniquets in particular, there's all kinds of stuff that has to be done to a soldier when they come back, because the wounds that are experienced in this war often are multiple shrapnel wounds, so it's a very complicated thing to treat somebody who's been wounded in this war, quite often at least. So money needs to go to them too. So that's another place to put your money if you're not feeling like shotgun shooting is the shotgun shooting training, I should say, is not the thing. But all of these things, let's put them in order. If they can prevent the drone from hitting, then you don't need the medicine. But that doesn't mean that we can't assume that all everybody, if gets trained, will defend against all drones. They can't. So we still have to fund all these. War Doggo, the proactive fundraiser, is currently being spent. The money into that is currently being spent on the heaters, which are keeping frontline soldiers warm in terrifically cold environments right now. So that's just if you're not warm enough on the front line, you get exhausted easily. Your body literally runs out of energy so much faster when it's cold out, and it really diminishes people's ability for attention and the like, and reaction. So this is incredibly important to do that as well. The money that you donate to any of these causes affects how things are going. It's a life and death issue that you're helping to address for Ukraine. Uh, I can stop there.
Well, I just wanted to add to that one. That one is I feel really critical right now. Um, I did a matching donation the other night, which for me that's a big deal. I'm not wealthy, so it was a lot of money to donate all at once. And several others of our Volia crew are doing that as well, which just shows how critical it is right now to get these. They're small diesel heaters. War Dogo gets a really good price on them, and he has a lot of requests for them right now, and it is cold in Ukraine. It is very cold, and it's heating the people, the soldiers on the front line is important. But another thing to keep in mind is that they depend very much on drones, and drone batteries function much better when they're not cold. When they're cold, they run out of energy much more quickly. So it's not only keeping the soldiers warm, you're also keeping all those drones warm until they need to use them, and that's important too. Besides, all the cats. Cats need to be warm too. All the cats and dogs they have on the front line with them.
Thank you, Wendy. And yeah, that's brilliant statements. Keep your cats warm. They'll keep you warm. It happens. The one thing I want to thank you especially for is for doing the matching. And you put up $200 and you didn't get $200 back. You got more than $200. So way to match. Woohoo. But you didn't have to spend more than 200. So that's wonderful. That shows the generosity. And yeah, of the Volya radio listeners, we sure appreciate, and I have to say, and volunteers. So appreciate that, everybody. Well, let's see here. We've been at this. I've been at it since 10 till 11. So it's over. It's almost, wow, it's getting like 3.5 hours for me or something like that. I don't know. Can't do time math. I'm learning. But anyway, Wendy.
Yeah, yeah, we have been at it for
Yep, lost your sound. Roll. Well, I lost sound. I don't do. Anybody else? Can you hear Wendy?
Can you hear
Well,
me?
shucks. You want
No.
to? Now I can.
No.
No, I can't hear you, Wendy.
I can hear you now, Wendy. Thanks, Awana. Well, okay. Nobody's talking.
Is
So
that better? My
better.
AirPods died.
I thought
Yeah.
so. Yes.
There we go. I had to change to a different pair. Thank goodness I have two.
Come prepared. Yes, indeed. You would have been a good Boy Scout, except for one thing, Wendy. Anyways, I'll let you figure out what that one thing is. Nonetheless, well, I think I'm ready to go because the Boy Scout motto is "Be prepared," and the reply to that is "We are prepared," except many of them aren't. Anyways, Wendy, we should think of other words that we should say and then reply to at this point, I think, because I'm ready to go, folks. This has been a most enjoyable and valuable session for me. I learned a lot from Decoding and from many other people who spoke, especially about AI and other topics. So I really, really appreciate the Volya Radio community that's here. We're here for Ukraine. Well, Wendy, shall we?
Yeah, I just wanted to also thank everyone who came up for their interesting information and analyses and discussion. We appreciate you all, and we should just let people know what's coming up. It is Wednesday, so we have book club followed by Sippin' and Poopin', the SBU overview, and then we will have the Boom Report a few hours later. So come back to us later on in the day, evening, afternoon, whatever it is for you.
All righty then, and thank you, Wendy, again. Let's see, Slava Ukraini.
Heron Slava.
Slava Nazi.
Smert Voraham.
Shmert Voraham. Побачимось, everybody. Take care of yourselves and others.
Побачимось.